Chapter 281, Yaezakura. After Huo Yuhao completed his transformation into a bud lifeless one, the followers of the Holy Spirit cult finished theirs as well. A pack of werewolf-like figures emerged into the dim light of the underground city. Their bodies were cloaked in gray fur, marked with deep blue, mysterious patterns. Each radiated an oppressive chill. The beasts howled to the ceiling, their cries echoing through the vast caverns, as if intent on tearing open the confinement above. The Medicine King is compassionate. Jianmu grows, the planter is single-minded, and together they ascend to ultimate bliss. The chant rolled through the Holy Spirit cult quarters again and again, a fervent, swelling cheer that reverberated across the entire subterranean city. Zhongli Wu and the others were swept up in that frenzy. Although these new bud lifeless werewolves lacked Huo Yuhao's terrifying immortal traits and superlative strength, limb regeneration was now trivial for them. Each bud lifeless one exuded a unique, oppressive aura that sharply reduced the power of weaker evil soul masters. Their sharpened claws, sturdy bodies, and extraordinary recuperative abilities made them the core of what looked like an undead army, and the thought of such a force on a battlefield was terrifying. Ha! Good, good, good. Zhongli Wu laughed aloud, elated. With an army of bud lifeless ones, the Holy Spirit cult would no longer need to fear anything. Even if they broke from the Sun-Moon Empire, they would have the confidence to walk openly in the sunlight. And this was only the beginning. As long as Hulei endured, the blessing of abundance would continue supplying the transformations. In time, the bud lifeless army would only grow. The higher-ups might even become bud lifeless ones themselves. Huo Yuhao's metamorphosis had shown that a bud lifeless transformation integrated the spirit's power and greatly improved strength. Short of utter annihilation, one could possess near infinite lifespan, a condition almost on par with a divinity. To many, the life of a spirit master suddenly seemed insignificant. Not everyone shared that fanatic joy. Long Xiaoyao frowned, worry flashing in his eyes, and sometimes he sighed helplessly. Yi Shishui's smile was tinged with hesitation. She began to doubt whether she'd made the right choice. The Holy Spirit cult had once been an evil soul master group that inspired condemnation, but at least they had been human. Now, having chosen transformation and abandoned human form, their future was uncertain and frightening. Yet at this moment, it was too late to backtrack. Hulei's strength was terrifying and his nature brutal, a textbook dictator, and he already had the backing of most followers. Stopping him seemed impossible. Even Ye Shishui and Long Xiaoyao knew they could not defeat Hulei and felt nothing but helplessness. But there was a larger calculation behind their tacit acquiescence. Something far more ominous was stirring in the Sun-Moon Empire, a threat so terrible that even schemers like Zhongli Wu felt fear. Faced with that unknown, choosing Hulei felt like the lesser risk. So they let the Holy Spirit cult fall under his control. Hulei watched his newly transformed followers with a sinister smile. Yet when thoughts turned to the mysterious power lurking within the Sun-Moon Empire, his expression shifted to one of deep apprehension. The Bud Lifeless ones were not on the same path as the Antimatter Legion. In fact, the Antimatter Legion would actively seek their destruction. Take Xingxiao, for example. She had once petitioned the Jianzhou Alliance for help to annihilate the Wing Weaver's planet. Neither side would yield. Hulei had detected traces of devastation in the Sun-Moon Empire. Whoever had been summoned there might have been the Lord of Annihilation. Anyone capable of creating Void Rangers had to be at least Catastrophe Vanguard rank. If the Lord of Annihilation truly descended, Hulei believed this planet, even the entire galaxy, could be destroyed. Whoever was summoned here would be only a memory body, incapable of the main body's full power, perhaps comparable to a universe-level divinity, like Hulei himself, no longer at his peak. Even so, the Lord of Annihilation remained a universe-shaking catastrophe, for whom destroying a planet was trivial. Worse, the Sun-Moon Empire appeared to be cooperating with this suspect, meaning materials for destruction might be continuously supplied. Within the antimatter furnace, who knew how many Void Rangers or planet-targeting weapons would be forged? In production of troop-like weapons, the Antimatter Legion was second only to the Swarm of Propagation. Its name among the universe's great disasters was not undeserved. Jinglu's name filled Hulai with acute dread, even more than the speculative Lord of Annihilation. Whenever he thought of Jinglu, a deep fear rose in him. He had spent centuries imprisoned, trying every method to find a countermeasure, and had failed. Jinglu left an indelible psychological mark on him. The emissary of intellect and other renowned figures gathered on this small planet, the Luofu Swordmaster, the Bud Lifeless War Master, the Lord of Annihilation, any one of them could shake the universe. That they were all here at once made Hulai pity the planet's fate. At least, he told himself, they were probably not their main bodies. If they were, this world would already be finished. In a dark corner, a fox-eared girl with cherry-colored hair leaned against the wall, watching the chaos with helpless eyes. Her master had become a puppet, bereft of self-awareness, which was why she remained inside the cult's den. The actions of the evil soul masters disgusted her. More than once she had nearly drawn her sword and cut them down. Yet she restrained herself for the sake of her controlled master and endured. Perhaps because she made no secret of her revulsion and because the cult needed her power, the others curbed their behavior in her presence. Otherwise, she was not sure she could have held back. Big sister, these people are so scary. A two-headed loli with pink hair and fox ears suddenly chirped as she clambered onto Yaisakura's shoulder. Her eyes were fixed on Hulai, trembling with fear. Yaisakura bristled at being called Big Sister. She disliked the title. But Hiyumaru, the little fox, refused to change it, and Yaisakura could do nothing about it. Big sister, why don't we take Xiaoya and run? I always feel like that big guy wants to eat me. Hiyumaru chattered in her ear, making Yaisakura's brow twitch. How she wanted, more than anything, to escape this place with Tanya. Yet it wasn't so simple. Aside from Hulai, Long Xiaoyao and Ye Shishui were powerful enough to stop her. Tanya had ingested the cult's secret medicine and was poisoned. Leaving the cult would likely be a death sentence. Besides, the controlled Tanya wouldn't come with her in any case. Yaisakura knew her own strength among the followers was middling. Hulai was far above her. At best, she could stalemate with Long Xiaoyao or Ye Shishui. She could not force the cult to release Tanya. Not now. We can't take her, Yaisakura said at last, helpless. She watched the pack of werewolves a moment longer, then melted into the shadows and vanished. Hiyumaru slumped, ears drooping, clearly unhappy. She had long hated the dark, oppressive headquarters and yearned to see other worlds, but now was not the time. Hulai glanced toward the dark corner, and a trace of disdain crossed his face. He thought Yaisakura naive, useful sometimes, but otherwise weak. Her fox ears made him think of the little fox people his Bud Lifeless ones hunted. Had her master not been a puppet with useful power, he would have devoured her without mercy. After all, as fellow followers condensed from negative energy, consuming another would only increase his own power. At Haiwan City, Lu Jingming had just seen Jing Hongchen off. Jing Hongchen, who had come to meet him personally, took the opportunity to share a wealth of grim intelligence. With the strong backing of an unknown force, Mingde Hall had achieved a major breakthrough: the successful development of humanoid mechs and even massive giant mechs. The Sun Moon Empire, fully promoting the project, had begun mass production and was assembling a significant mech force. Crucially, the energy source driving these mechs did not come from Mingde Hall's own spirit tools, but from energy furnaces supplied by that mysterious power. These furnaces were peculiar devices full of chilling destructive force. They provided tremendous energy, but also produced extreme pollution. Prolonged exposure of mech pilots to that energy carried a high risk of horrific mutation. Mingde Hall had conscripted many soul conductor researchers to study the furnace, and from it, they had developed numerous powerful spirit tools. Jing Hongchen had witnessed a tragedy. A soul conductor, obsessed with the furnace's power, failed to take adequate protection during experiments and was corroded by its destructive particles. His body was instantly transformed into a pure killing machine, obedient, mindless, and specialized for destruction. A 7th-rank soul conductor so transformed displayed terrifying might, forcing even a 9th-level soul instructor to intervene to barely suppress him. The worst part, Mingde Hall did not destroy the corrupted researcher. Instead, operatives from the Sun Moon Empire imperial family recovered him, implying the imperial family had methods to control such emotionless war weapons. Jing Hongqian was not here by accident. Kong Deming had asked him to convey this intelligence to Lu Jingming to force Jing Hongqian to choose a side. Jing Hongqian, a cunning fox, had long remained noncommittal, watching the shifting balance among powers. But Kong Deming's intervention left him no choice, and by delivering this message, he made his decision known. What Jing Hongqian feared most was Shu Tianran, who had become increasingly deranged. As hall master of Mingde Hall and head of the Hongqian family, with deep roots and wide connections, Jing Hongqian had independent sources of information. On the surface, Mingdu seemed calm, but an unseen pressure was spreading through the city. Elsewhere in the Sun Moon Empire, people were vanishing without a trace. The situation around the Jingyang mountain range, the empire's greatest spirit beast gathering ground, second only to the evil demon forest, was even grimmer. Spirit beasts there had suddenly dwindled. Once a reliable hunting ground for spirit masters, it had become almost impossible to find a 1,000-year beast. This alarming fact had been tightly sealed from the public, but Jing Hongqian knew the truth. The spirit beasts of the Jingyang mountain range were effectively near extinction. Where had they gone? Recalling the soul conductor turned killing weapon by the furnace's negative particles, Jing Hongqian reached a grim conclusion. The disappearances and the vanishing spirit beasts were likely connected to Shu Tianran's shadowy dealings. Faced with such a monstrous hidden threat, how could he remain calm? Clearly, Shu Tianran had been hiding unspeakable things from the ancient families of the Sun Moon Empire. Chapter 281, Changli and the Enforcement Guard. The situation in the Sun Moon Empire had become dangerously delicate. Though Shu Tianran had not yet formally taken the throne and was still nominally crown prince, the emperor was bedridden, and Shu Tianran had already assumed control of the court as regent. Backed by the military, he wielded immense power. Nearly all 5 great protectors had fallen under his influence, and the whole arrangement of power had shifted to the point that nothing could realistically stop his accession. Even if the emperor recovered, Shu Tianran's temperament would never allow him to give up the opportunity to seize power again. Kong Deming, the undisputed top soul conductor of the Sun Moon Empire, now found himself helpless before Shu Tianran's unchecked expansion and had been forced to step back and quietly coordinate with Lu Jingming for the time being. Lu Jingming knew, from Zhu Zi and others, who the summoned attendant was: Xing Xiao, one of the 7 Annihilation Monarchs, the favored vanguard general of the destruction divinity Nanook, and the core leader of the Antimatter Legion. Among the Annihilation Monarchs, he was the figurehead, originally infinite captain under the Harmony divinity Saipe, a Harmony emissary who had later been poached by Nanook. Those chosen by Saipe were all exceptionally beautiful. Xing Xiao was no exception. If Lu Jingming had encountered Xing Xiao in the Star Rail world, he would likely have fled long ago. In this universe, Xing Xiao had been summoned through Lu Jingming's memories and a surge of negative energy. He was dangerous, but Herta stood behind him, so Lu Jingming was not panicked. At first, Lu Jingming had not expected someone like Xing Xiao to appear. Douluo Star simply did not hold that much negative energy. But after his recent conversations with Herta, the whole picture became clear. A single planet's negative energy couldn't support a being like Xing Xiao. The key was the Black Abyss, the tomb of the gods, which had devoured countless godly realms and stored the resentment and negative energy of fallen divinities. It was the darkness of the universe. Only because Herta had ripped open the Black Abyss did some of that energy leak through. If a direct connection to the tomb of the gods were established, an attendant strength could break the heavens. The Annihilation Monarchs were already terrifying in their main bodies. Provided enough negative energy, their peak power could be reproduced and galaxies ignited. For now, Xing Xiao was far from invincible. He was a memory body, not the true main body, so Lu Jingming felt confident he could handle him. If things went out of hand, he could summon Yellow Springs with the power of truth, pouring all his accumulated stores into one call. Yellow Springs' strength would cut down any unstable factor in a single blow. He also had Herta, a legitimate emissary, who alone could handle much of the current threat. Lu Jingming's reserves ran deep, No single unexpected summoned attendant could rattle him. Shu Tianran's methods, however, were brutal and reckless. He had turned ordinary citizens into void troopers by throwing them into the antimatter furnace and had exterminated the spirit beasts of the entire Jingjiang mountain range. Spirit beasts across the Douluo Continent had been declining in number for years, and spirit masters had painstakingly tried to limit hunting. Shu Tianran's actions displayed a contempt for the future and a willingness to sacrifice the continent's foundations to further his ambition. Perhaps he perceived limitations in the spirit master system compared to external forces and sought to remake the professional order of the whole continent. Lu Jingming did not know his true intentions, only that the Sun Moon Empire's forces, with the Antimatter Legion, the Holy Spirit Cult, and the Mech Legion, had become a crushing power that could overwhelm the older great empires like the Star Luo Empire. Lu Jingming also understood the limits of luck. While masters were chosen by a planet's will and could be swayed by Douluo Star's luck, attendants were summoned from the World Tree's memories and followed different rules. His own luck in summoning attendants had been mediocre. He'd gotten a mature Raiden Mei instead of the origin Raiden Mei he would have preferred. The mature Raiden Mei was reduced in power, more akin to a capable housekeeper than a top-tier fighter, though he could, by spending Power of Truth or using Raiden Mei as an anchor, bring forth the origin version. Even so, he did not depend solely on powerful summons. If necessary, he could summon Yellow Springs and end things outright. That steady, layered reserve of plans was why he felt at ease even as strange characters appeared in his world. He wanted a colorful, diversified world, one not simply dominated by him, but filled with variables and challenges. The attendants and newcomers would push the world toward broader development. As long as those variables stayed within his tolerance, he welcomed them. Meng Hongqian and Xiao Hongqian had left, as had Xingjian Ya and the young master. Lu Jingming noticed that Xingjian Ya had given him a furtive, evasive look and had not invited him to cultivate together this time. He felt a small pang of exhaustion. He suspected Xingjian Ya had indeed been on guard that night. The woman's odd personality might even have turned it into a kind of cultivation. As city lord of Haiyuan City, Lu Jingming felt inadequate in some ways. Too much of his time was spent on cultivation, flirting, and mischief. Yet the city prospered, and that success owed most to Changli. Kei Qing, Jinshi, and Ye Miko had helped, but Changli was the city's greatest contributor. On the top floor of Haiyuan City's skyscraper, Changli stood in her usual magnificent phoenix-like attire, high heels and black stockings, radiating a mature, blazing allure. She stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the bustling crowd below. Haiyuan had become the continent's most advanced modern city, its population swelling with citizens from Star Luo Empire and visitors from other realms, including people from the Sun Moon Empire who were welcomed regardless of status. It was all part of a long-term plan. Suddenly, Changli's brow twitched. A red light flashed across her, and she vanished, narrowly evading a pair of hands that reached out from a black mist. The mist looked as if it could decompose anything, space itself, and was spreading. Lu Jingming strolled out coolly behind the mist. Failed, he said, feigning disappointment. He had been testing a new skill that used the Black Abyss's decomposition power to analyze and break down spatial structures, enabling a kind of space transfer. Surrounded by guidance from Jingliu and Herda, and with Guyue's exquisite spatial control nearby, Lu Jingming had quickly grasped the Douluo Continent's spatial properties and learned to use decomposition for transfer. He'd intended a small experiment and a harmless ambush. After all, Changli had once jokingly said that if he ever bested her, he could do as he pleased. Just because I don't object to sneak attacks as a tactic doesn't mean I'll accept being taken by surprise, Changli said, narrowing her phoenix-shaped eyes in a half-smile. She could accept losing to Lu Jingming and indulging him. She had watched him grow into a man, but a victory by trickery would leave her unconvinced. Just kidding. I only wanted to test a new skill. Sister Changli is as sharp as ever, Lu Jingming said quickly, hands up in mock surrender. He knew he couldn't legitimately claim victory by trickery. If he ever wanted Changli to honor that promise, he would have to beat her fair and square. Does your current strength make me feel a little worried? Shall I find a place to hide? Changli teased, her lips curving seductively. The way she touched her red lips and tilted her head stirred something in Lu Jingming, but he'd grown more composed over the years and shook his head to steady himself. A look of surprise flickered across Changli's features, followed by a smile of relief. She had a soft spot for the boy she'd watched grow up. Sister Changli, the Sun Moon Empire is pulling out all the stops. Between their Mech Legion, Antimatter Legion, and the Soul Conductor forces, we need to prepare, Lu Jingming said, flopping onto the leather sofa behind Changli's desk. The sofa, soft, warm, faintly fragrant, was made from a rare spirit beast hide and clearly bore Changli's aura. We've been preparing for a while, she replied. Many fusion warriors have been born in recent years, and your little girlfriend provided a lot of valuable spirit beast genes. There was no hint of reproach in her eyes, only indulgence. Changli settled into his lap with a fragrant breeze. Her presence was composed and quietly intoxicating. She extended a slender finger and traced the air. A projection screen sprang to life above the desk, revealing a military base east of Haiyuan City, divided into various zones, the Legion's camps. She tapped one zone, and the image expanded to show the enforcement guard fully armored in black spirit tool armor. Their numbers now exceeded 10,000. Every enforcement guard was a fusion warrior infused with spirit beast genes, their spirit tool armor and weapons perfectly matched. Their combat power was formidable. Chapter 283, Molten Knights. On the screen, the Golden Guards stood out first, led by Lu Wu and Lu Qingluan, along with a host of other Golden Guard commanders. They carried the crucial duty of defending Seabis City, so their training and equipment emphasized defense. Their spirit tool combination formations were defensive in nature, and each guard carried a detachable Xuanwu shield. The shield not only offered tremendous protection, but could also be used for crowd control, sealing, and even deploying spirit tool arrays. The defensive formation formed by tens of thousands of Golden Guards was astonishing. It could even withstand a full-strength blow from Changli. That mattered because Changli had now reached the terrifying level of a rank 99 limit Douluo, so the Golden Guards' combined defense could resist the bombardment of a level 9 fixed-load spirit tool cannon. Such defense was extraordinary. Even the 5 great protectors of the Sun Moon Empire would hesitate to claim they could stand firm under a level 9 fixed-load shot. If not for the Mecha Legion and the Antimatter Legion, the Golden Guards alone would be enough to dominate the Douluo Continent. Their power came from the fusion of spirit tools and fusion warriors. Apart from the earliest members, later recruits to the Golden Guards had fusion genes tuned for defense. Combined with deep study of the Xuanming sect's techniques, Seabis City developed the Xuanwu Shield from level 5 to level 9, each version specialized in defense and control. The level 9 Xuanwu Shield, in particular, left even a titled Douluo trapped and nearly unable to break free. The Golden Guards' primary duty was to protect Seabis City and maintain order within it. The Xuanwu Shield was designed precisely for that purpose. Lu Jingming cradled a fragrant, soft beauty in his arms, and so he was not behaving well. He slid an arm around Changli's slim waist and focused on the screen. Seeing the Golden Guards exceed 10,000 and develop so powerfully, a pleased smile broke across his face. After all, this was a legion he had founded from the start. Watching it grow into such a force made him proud. Changli rolled her eyes at his restless hand, but didn't push him away. Instead, she moved her finger across the screen, bringing up the next set of deployments. Now the display showed a legion made up of many different troop types. Unlike the Golden Guard's defensive specialization, this legion was built for offensive operations, complex, complementary, and tightly integrated. First to appear were the Wind Fist Vanguards. Clad in black-green spirit tool armor and fused with wind attribute spirit beast genes, they wielded spirit tool iron fists. Wind enhanced their strikes and let them form elemental barriers around teammates. They could also purge negative status effects, preserving their squad's combat effectiveness in shifting conditions. Next were the Thunder Hammer Vanguards. In purple-black armor, bearing massive lightning-streaked great hammers, they had fused with Thunder attribute Spirit Beast genes. They could control lightning to deliver devastating thunderstrikes. The water cannon heavy guards and ice cannon heavy guards were equally fearsome. Fused with water and ice attribute spirit beast genes respectively, they carried water and ice spirit cannons. The water cannon units attacked and controlled by manipulating flows to restrict enemy movement. The ice cannon units froze foes in place, shaping the battlefield to their side's advantage. Geo-skirmishers served as the defensive and long-range support. Fused with Earth attribute Spirit Beast genes and armed with Spirit Tool staves, they could raise solid shields and unleash Earth element long-range suppression. The Pyro-skirmishers carried Fire attribute Spirit Tool sniper rifles. Fused with Fire attribute genes, they struck precisely from extreme distances. Their incendiary rounds had powerful explosive impact and penetration. Beyond these core types, many elite units filled out the roster. Pyro agents specialized in assassination, slipping through darkness like a ghost to land fatal blows. Electro-Sisson mages and Cryo-Sisson mages controlled lightning and ice in devastating spirit ability attacks. Mirror Maidens, Anima Boxer, Frostarm Lawachurl, and other elite types played other important roles. Their unique skills let the Fatui Legion remain potent across complex environments. This diversity let the Fatui Legion operate anywhere. In raw effectiveness, it even surpassed the Golden Guards, today the undisputed Ace Legion of Sea Abyss City. But to create such variety required a correspondingly diverse supply of Spirit Beast genes. The main provider of those genes was young Miss Gu Yu. As co-lord of Spirit Beasts, as long as Spirit Beasts existed, there was no gene she couldn't procure. Gu Yu contributed as much as half to the Fatui Legion's formation. Without her vast Spirit Beast gene pool, those strange and powerful fusion warriors, the Fatui's elite soldiers, could not exist. Leading the Fatui soldiers on the screen were Yu Mengdi, the 11th Harbinger Skywing, and Ye Wuqing, the 10th Harbinger Golden. As some of the earliest genius spirit masters to pledge to Lu Jingming, both received lavish support: spirit bones, stigmas, Honkai energy, and rare heaven and earth treasures. With such resources, their growth accelerated. Both had reached spirit Douluo level strength. Within the Fatui, they were junior harbingers. Their talent was exceptional. Ye Wuqing's ability rivaled that of disciples from Shrek Inner Court. Under Lu Jingming's resources, they had even advanced faster than many Inner Court disciples. Still, Lu Jingming worried about burning their long-term potential. He refused to overconsume them. Pushing them to titled Douluo via artificial means would create fighters with questionable longevity. Yu Mengdi and Ye Wuqing understood this, so they trained hard in the simulated universe, mastering various spirit tools and refining their own spirit abilities instead of chasing rank alone. Competition within the Fatui was fierce. Many fusion warriors coveted harbinger slots. Lu Jingming even had Keqing and Ganyu temporarily fill some positions, slots that would later be given to more suitable candidates. This intense environment continually forged strong individuals, another reason the Fatui became Sea Abyss City's Ace Legion. Any one of their soldiers could serve as a mid-level officer in other empires' armies. Changli, annoyed, slapped away Lu Jingming's hand as it crept up her thigh. She swept her finger across the screen again. The Knight Return Army appeared, modern equipped, adept at operating spirit tool detectors, drones, and combat vehicles. Though primarily responsible for logistics and support, they possessed considerable combat power thanks to the most advanced spirit tools. The Knight Return Army numbered 30,000, making it the largest legion by headcount. They had clear specializations: intelligence gathering with high-end detectors and drones, operation of large spirit tool installations to supply front lines, and long-range strike units for fire support. Between the Fatui Legion's combat focus, the Golden Guard's defense, and the Knight Return Army's intelligence and logistics, Sea Abyss City's 3 major legions were formed. Their total of 50,000 elite troops had undergone strict selection and training. Although not as numerous as the hundreds of thousands or millions fielded by other empires, their combat power was formidable. In simulated universe drills, these 50,000 defeated the Northwest Army Group, the Star Luo Empire's strongest legion stationed in the Mingdo mountain range, head-on. That force, led personally by Duke White Tiger and numbering around 300,000, with 2 Spirit Master legions and several titled Douluo, should have been formidable, yet Sea Abyss City's 3 legions overwhelmed them in the simulations. Sea Abyss City had run many such simulations against elite forces from other empires, collecting abundant intelligence. The results showed that, apart from the Sun Moon Empire's 5 protectors, armies like the Star Luo, Tianhun, and Dueling Empires could not match Sea Abyss City's 3 major legions. In military terms alone, Sea Abyss City was already extremely strong, and only getting stronger. Lu Jingming did not easily give up, despite Changli stopping him earlier. His right hand slowly slid up her lower abdomen beneath her clothes, creeping toward the place that mentally dominated the city's commander. Changli showed an exasperated expression and shifted position to be more comfortable, pretending not to notice and treating his antics as a small indulgence. She continued to scroll the display. Finally, a special legion appeared on the spirit tool screen, just 500 people. Lu Jingming instantly sat bolt upright, pulling Changli tightly into his arms and reflexively gripping with his right hand. Changli winced and let out a muffled groan, staring at him in exasperation. Lu Jingming flushed with apology and embarrassment, but he could hardly hide the excitement gnawing at him. The legion on the screen was simply too astounding. In the barracks stood exactly 500 silver-white molten mecha, each over 3 meters tall and arranged in perfect order. Lu Jingming's meticulously crafted trump card, the Lava Knight Order. Their pilots were all fusion warriors above the Spirit Saint realm, and their loyalty to Lu Jingming was absolute. These molten mecha were built from Firefly's SAM mecha design and had recognition systems that allowed them to resonate, coexist, and even evolve with their pilots. Their raw materials came from the Ice Pole Divine Crystal found beneath the Earth Dragon Gate, specifically the rarest crystals that contained a living spirit, a spiritual active metal of priceless value. Each molten mecha housed a Honkai energy furnace, providing immense power. They were armed with concentrated beam cannons capable of devastating long-range strikes and carried plasma swords for lethal close-quarters combat. They also had anti-gravity fields, spatial phase transfer devices, and a stellar propulsion system, all of which boosted maneuverability and battlefield survivability. The combat capability of a single molten mecha rivaled that of an ordinary titled Douluo. 500 molten mecha were therefore equivalent to 500 titled Douluo-level powerhouses. In earlier eras, such a force could have swept the Douluo Continent. Even during the Holy Grail War, when servants altered the balance, this strength would have been a decisive advantage. The Lava Knight Order was the culmination of years of resource investment, Lu Jingming's absolute ace and Sea Abyss City's future guarantee. Naturally, he would not hand it to just anyone. The Order's leader was Firefly, only she could make Lu Jingming sleep peacefully. Because the molten mecha were based on Firefly's SAM mecha, she maintained underlying control of them all. Even if a molten mecha recognized a pilot, it could not escape her command, unless the mecha and pilot evolved together to a level that broke that base control. Even then, Lu Jingming had other means to secure loyalty. Those capable of evolving a molten mecha would be extraordinary, and they would receive special treatment. Besides, the pilots themselves were fusion warriors who owed their new lives to Lu Jingming. Their devotion was fierce. Barring Lu Jingming's own folly, betrayal was nearly impossible. With these safeguards, the Lava Knight Order remained firmly under his control. With such a force, Sea Abyss City could face the coming wars with confidence. Even the Antimatter Legion, limited by materials and energy and lacking the path of destruction, was unlikely to reach the apocalyptic level it had in the original universe. Lu Jingming was not overly worried about the Antimatter Legion ruining the planet. Although Xingxiao wielded much high technology, as a memory construct, her knowledge was incomplete and could not rival Herta's full recollection. The Antimatter Legion's tech, interstellar warships, star-level weapons, and cosmic-class devices could accelerate the Sun Moon Empire's spirit tool development if fully leveraged. But Xingxiao treated the Sun Moon Empire merely as a tool, not a priority. Chapter 284, Dragon and Phoenix Combination. Even with Xingxiao's help, the Sun Moon Empire had only just managed to get onto the mecha research and development track and begin assembling its own mecha core. Against true hard power, though, they were still painfully short. The Sun Moon Empire's spirit tool technology base was already behind Sea Abyss City, and its industrial foundations lagged even further. Sea Abyss City, backed by the Black Tower, was simply in a different league. Even if Xing Xiao handed over the most advanced mecha blueprints and design concepts without reservation, the limitations in materials and manufacturing processes remained two immovable mountains choking the Sun Moon Empire's mecha development. Those colossal mecha, theoretically capable of titled Douluo-level combat power, were severely constrained by production capacity. Their eventual numbers would be pitiably small. Lu Jingming estimated that, even with a full national mobilization, they could probably scrape together only a few dozen. If they tried to pursue quantity instead, they would have to cut core configurations and sacrifice performance, drastically reducing combat effectiveness until they posed no real threat to Sea Abyss City. He knew well that catching up to the Lava Knight Order's molten mecha would not happen overnight. Without centuries, perhaps a millennium, of technological accumulation, resource buildup, and the luck of finding suitable special materials, it was a pipe dream. What made it worse for the Sun Moon Empire was that the molten mecha were only the first-generation products from Sea Abyss City's R&D. With the Black Tower, a true genius, overseeing development, Sea Abyss City's iteration speed in the mecha domain was staggering. Continuous upgrades and replacements for the molten mecha were a given. In the Black Tower's hands, even transforming those steel behemoths into interstellar war mecha wouldn't be far-fetched. Sea Abyss City was still constrained by the continent's overall materials and manufacturing level, so the molten mecha remained at their current technological height for now. But given the situation across the Douluo Continent, that reserve of combat power was more than enough to handle threats from every direction. "Changli, you've been working hard these past few days." Lu Jingming's tone was softer than water. He looked at Changli with undisguised fondness, his hand twitching as if to move closer. Changli, however, seemed to expect it. With a slight shift, she slid off his lap, evading his embrace with effortless grace. A playful smile lit her face. She raised a slender finger to her lips, eyes twinkling. "I'm not like the young girls around you who can be won over with a few sweet words," she teased. Her playful tone implied he'd have to try harder. Lu Jingming made a carefully measured show of disappointment, but wasn't hurried. He hadn't expected to win her over overnight. "I meant it. Without you, Changli, Sea Abyss City wouldn't be what it is today." He knew how indispensable Changli was. So many complicated tasks that he couldn't handle personally were managed by her. He'd hoped to use this moment to get closer, but he had miscalculated. Still, there would be time. He had the patience of someone who intended to woo slowly and surely. "You really want to thank me?" Changli asked, blinking in a way that seemed to read his thoughts. Then she gave a deep, inscrutable smile. "First, win over my little disciple." "Shishi?" Lu Jingming blinked, surprised, then laughed wryly. "Changli, you're serving up a master and disciple combo? That's a bold move. I like it." If the Dragon and Phoenix master and disciple duo ever truly came together, it would be a major coup for him. "Good that you like it, then you'll have to work for it," Changli said, narrowing her eyes with a mischievous flash. She'd been watching Lu Jingming these past days and thought his pursuit of Jin Shi was too passive. They behaved more like close friends than lovers. He'd even asked Jin Shi to console other girls and help them, small acts that made Changli anxious. Robin already had a child. When would Jin Shi and Lu Jingming get their happy ending if he kept being so hesitant? Disappointed in both of them, Changli decided to intervene directly, using the provocative master and disciple challenge to spur Lu Jingming into action. "I understand, Changli." Lu Jingming patted his chest in assurance. Provoked and secretly eager for that master and disciple pairing, he decided not to let things progress on their own. "I promise, as soon as this Holy Grail war is over, I'll take action and win over Shi. He resolved to change tactics and hit Jin Shi with a decisive move. "Oh, I'll be waiting to see." Changli crossed her arms, a simple pose that accentuated her curves and held his gaze. Though he'd always thought youthful types like Robin and Qiqing appealed to him, Changli's mature, voluptuous charm had its own undeniable pull. Putting romance aside, Lu Jingming remained chiefly concerned with Sea Abyss City's development. Its growth could not be reduced to the combat power of the three major armies and the Lava Knight Order. Sea Abyss City had become a magnet for spirit master families across the Douluo Continent. This was the birthplace of holy marks, and the holy mark system had begun to challenge the old pattern of hunting spirit beasts for spirit rings. Families who wanted exclusive holy marks, better prospects, or simply the safer, more prosperous life Sea Abyss City offered were relocating en masse. Sea Abyss City accepted all comers. Their arrival brought resources and manpower and replenished many mid to low-level combatants, timely aid for expansion. The three major armies had reached 50,000 and were still growing. Lu Jingming envisioned something grander. If a new empire rose in the future, a million-strong army would be the baseline. Of course, a million fusion warriors was impossible. Resource demands would be astronomical. The army would have to be filled with ordinary soldiers and mid to low-level spirit masters, with a core of fusion warriors ensuring elite capability. That configuration preserved both loyalty and control. Already, the three major armies included members of other families and sects who'd moved to Sea Abyss City. Yu Mengdi and Ye Wuqing, the Lan family with Lan Susu and Lan Luoluo, all had members serving in those forces. No large organization can remain a monolith as it grows. Diverse interests inevitably intertwine. Lu Jingming never expected to eliminate that. His priority was absolute power, ensuring everything stayed under his control. For example, the Lava Knight Order's pilots were loyal fusion warriors he personally trained. At this stage, no one from other families could become Lava Knights. Perhaps, in the future, if his deterrent power grew strong enough, he might relax membership restrictions. Not now. Lu Jingming also knew a force that made everyone a mindless follower would stagnate. He didn't want Sea Abyss City to become a giant baby that needed him to solve every problem. He needed to cultivate talent of all kinds, let capable people shine in different roles, and share the burden with Changli and others. That required delegating appropriately, freeing Changli, Keiqing, and the like from endless petty tasks so he could be a hands-off manager. Major authority had to remain firmly in his hands, but clinging to every minor prerogative was unnecessary. Distributing power could stimulate the whole organization, making Sea Abyss City run more smoothly and efficiently. His guiding principle was simple: the fist of power must be in his grip. With absolute power centralized, he could tolerate a degree of harmless self-interest among the families who migrated in. As long as their ambitions didn't go too far and they continued contributing, Lu Jingming could look the other way. Their allegiance had to be clear: loyalty to Sea Abyss City, to him, and diligent service as reliable workhorses. Meet that standard, and wealth and honor would follow. Under the lure of such rewards, Sea Abyss City grew rapidly and secured the resources and materials needed to support behemoths like its three armies and the Lava Knight Order. Armies were always expensive to maintain, especially elite ones. The required materials and upkeep were enormous. What Sea Abyss City lacked least were workhorses willing to serve. To earn a place here, people crossed mountains and rivers to find a foothold. "I feel more and more like an evil capitalist," Lu Jingming muttered, standing before the huge floor-to-ceiling window and watching Sea Abyss City bustle below. Traffic, voices, a living city. Holding a city like this, a single decree from him could ruin countless families or raise an unknown person to prominence overnight. The taste of controlling others' fates could be addicting, but Lu Jingming kept a clear head. He hadn't been wholly corrupted by power. In Sea Abyss City, no commoner starved or froze, and spirit beast attacks or harassment by evil spirit masters were not everyday threats. Spirit masters dared not oppress commoners lightly, and even nobles were restrained. The Golden Guard maintained strict order. Violators, spirit master or noble, were punished without exception. Commoners still sat near the bottom of society, but they retained basic dignity. They no longer toiled for mere survival or feared being killed for no reason. A child who awakened a spirit could attend St. Freya Academy or join the army and change their fate by effort. Sea Abyss City offered free spirit awakening services and living subsidies for low-level spirit masters below spirit elder rank. Lu Jingming had taken inspiration from the Spirit Hall of 10,000 years ago, which had offered free awakenings and subsidies and thereby controlled a huge share of commoner spirit masters. That influence had once made it the continent's unrecognized overlord. While the Spirit Hall later fell for complex reasons, its social policies were strategically brilliant. Sea Abyss City's implementation of similar policies had immediate effects. Commoners' sense of belonging rose quickly, and low-level spirit masters felt gratitude and willingness to contribute. Today on the Douluo Continent, Sea Abyss City was unique in providing free spirit awakening for all commoners and offering subsidies, policies that drew countless families. Even if they had to leave home, people came to Sea Abyss City for the chance of a free spirit awakening and the hope of changing their children's futures. Chapter 285, Hyperion. For the common people of the Douluo Continent, becoming a spirit master was almost the only route to advancement. Spirit masters were the world's ladder. The Sun Moon Empire might have institutions offering free spirit awakening, but those were reserved for native citizens, not for people from the former Douluo Three Kingdoms. Sea Abyss City, however, was different. Anyone who came to Sea Abyss City, regardless of origin, received free spirit awakening and, after registration, could claim subsidies. The policy consumed immense resources and showed no short-term return, but Lu Jingming had no intention of stopping it. He was thinking long-term. Investing a little now would yield immeasurable returns later. If Sea Abyss City could come to control the majority of Spirit Master resources on the continent, no newly rising force could shake its foundation. Sea Abyss City was not the Spirit Hall of old. Its influence had seeped into the continent like a web. The stigmata system reshaped Spirit Master growth. The simulated universe expanded cognition. Spirit tool technology revolutionized productivity, and top-tier combat power broke the old balance. Sea Abyss City was like a stone dropped into Douluo Continent's lake, stirring ripples that were quietly reshaping the world's future. Its reach was like roots underground. Only those at the top could sense something fundamental shifting beneath the surface. The invitation from the Sun Moon Empire lay on his desk, its gilded emblem cold beneath the light. Lu Jingming tapped his fingers and looked out at the glittering city lights of Sea Abyss City, then rose and summoned every master and servant present. A grand event that would shake the continent was about to begin. The stage was Mingdu. Wang Chuer and Durandal stood side by side, golden hair and silver armor catching each other's light. Yigui leaned in and whispered to Rimu, a soft halo around them. Zhang Lexuan looked composed, Klydela majestic at her side. Gu Yue's eyes were deep. Ishtar lounged bored on the floor, immaculate despite her posture. Lu Jingming stood in the center. Raiden Mei's purple hair flowed like a waterfall, a katana at her hip. Nearby, Shu Juju and Hysith arrived to join Sea Abyss City's team. 6 pairings were thus formed. On paper, a formidable lineup. Durandal, Klydela, Hysith, and Ishtar were all comparable to demigods. Even Raiden Mei and Rimu, described as somewhat weaker, were top tier in the old Douluo Continent. This Holy Grail war in Mingdu had long outgrown mortal imagination. It deserved the title Gods Fighting. Any ordinary titled Douluo who rushed in would be cannon fodder, dust in an instant. One careless move and an entire imperial capital could be flattened by these forces. That was why Shu Tianran had set the battlefield in Mingdu. He believed he could control the situation, defeat all masters and servants, and protect the heart of his empire. A lord of extinction, Lu Jingming mused with a faint smile. If he faces nothing equally powerful to restrain him, he might really become that. A lord of extinction was a terrifying force, cataclysmic for the Douluo Continent. Even a memory echo of such a being was enough to unbalance things. Star Howl's existence had clearly inflated Shu Tianran's ambition. Lu Jingming's gaze swept the assembled people, landing on Ishtar, lax and uninterested, and then on Durandal, stretching, golden hair in a neat ponytail. These two were not simple to subdue, and he knew Skirk was no joke either. The coming Holy Grail War would be full of twists. Lu Jingming pictured the satisfaction of seeing Shu Tianran's confident plans crumble. Even if Shu Tianran had a trump card, Lu Jingming had contingencies. His eyes rested on Jinglu, always wearing an eye patch. An inexplicable reassurance filled him. With a swordmaster like Jinglu present, even Star Howl's memory body would find it hard to stand against a blade that could cleave stars. Above them, In the realm-traveling star rail space, Herta presided. By virtue of the star rail's spatial authority, Herta could give support at any time, even instantly transfer Seabiss City's forces to Mingdu. That trump card alone made opponents cautious. Lu Jingming also summoned Mobius, the Snow Empress, and the Ice Empress to act covertly under the codename World Serpent. Their role was to ensure the Holy Grail War followed a course he could manage. Along with Wang Chuer and the other masters and servants, Lu Jingming brought Firefly and Ci. March 7th, Elysia and a few others stayed behind in Seabiss City. Robin could not come. She was pregnant, and it would be reckless to bring her to the unpredictable Sun-Moon Empire. March 7th had wanted to go, but she was closest to Robin and chose to stay and care for her. Elysia naturally disliked war and refused to participate. With preparations complete, Lu Jingming led Wang Chuer, Gu Ye, and the others aboard the massive vessel waiting at the docks, the Hyperion. The ship perfectly replicated the Hyperion from Lu Jingming's memories. Its streamlined hull suggested speed, silver-white and dark blue trimmed with gold and red. Every line was a blade, radiating cold technology and combat pressure. Hundreds of meters long, it cast a giant shadow like a dormant steel behemoth. Rows of top-tier spirit tools lined its frame. Most striking was the main cannon at the bow, a true level 10 spirit tool. One full-power shot could level a bustling city, its destructive force rivaling a demigod's full-strength attack. The bridge, at the front upper hull, had a panoramic viewport. In the command room's center floated an advanced holographic tactical panel displaying data and maps. Stellar system thrusters on the sides gave the ship unparalleled speed. The outer armor was covered with a high-resistance alloy developed by Herta, a memory metal with immense strength and self-repair capabilities, and its defense seemed impregnable. The Honkai energy thruster at the stern let the Hyperion break planetary gravity and reach space. Internally, the ship was a mobile small city. Command center, living quarters, training rooms, entertainment areas, laboratories, weapon bays. Energy shields, stealth mode, missile arrays, spatial warping, defensive, offensive, and auxiliary systems in abundance. Lu Jingming had replicated the original Hyperion down to the smallest detail. Although the core used Douluo spirit tool tech and included a Honkai-style energy furnace, materials and weapon systems differed from the original. Still, seeing it brought a wave of nostalgia. He had once served as a deckhand on that battleship and felt an affection others could not understand. Recreating it in reality was a joy. Miss Herta was unparalleled, beautiful, brilliant, omnipotent, and he sighed with fondness at the memory of the first time he'd seen the Hyperion and spun Herta around in excitement, only to be promptly beaten by an angry Herta. He would never tell anyone how light and soft her body had felt. "This is the Hyperion?" Raiden May and Durandal said in near unison when the blue and white giant descended from the clouds and deactivated its stealth. Boarding and inspecting it, they realized it was not the same Hyperion they remembered. The exterior matched perfectly, but the internal spirit tool technology differed. Even with the Honkai-style furnace, the materials and weapons were different. Still, a familiar sight from another world filled them with surprise and warmth. Hyperion, depart. Destination, Mingdu, Sun-Moon Empire. Lu Jingming ordered from the command room. The ship's AI acknowledged and controlled the Hyperion as it slowly ascended. The continent's map had been loaded into the AI, so it could perform the trip without manual navigation. With a soft shudder, the Hyperion climbed to several thousand meters, and its stern ejected dazzling blue-purple particles, a streak of light cutting across the sky and quickly vanishing from view. On the ground in Seabiss City, March 7th, Robin and others watched the battleship disappear. March 7th showed little envy. The Astral Express was more advanced anyway. Robin, who had seen countless universe battleships, wasn't impressed either. "Let's go back, Sister Robin," March 7th said, eyes bright. "I found a fantastic clothing shop earlier. The designers are top-notch. Let's make some beautiful clothes for the baby." She looked at Robin's abdomen. Though there was no visible bump yet, life energy pulsed strongly. March 7th could feel the surging vitality even without life-related powers. "She's a little girl, so she'll have to be dressed beautifully." Elysia smiled warmly. Determining the baby's gender had been easy for Mobius and Herta, one a biology expert, the other a universe-level genius scientist. Has a Ming picked a name? March 7th hopped closer, expectant. If the name's bad, I'll be the first to veto. Robin stroked her belly, her face glowing with a softer, more radiant kind of beauty, the gentle brilliance of impending motherhood. A Ming said since it's a girl, she'll be called Lu Mingyin. Ah, a girl and about to be a mother. This is the most beautiful sight. Elysia praised sincerely. Robin looked captivating, the light of motherhood making her unusually gentle and warm. Lu Mingyin. March 7th repeated the name a few times, grinning. A Ming's lazy with names, but it sounds sweet. Ming from Lu Jingming and Yin from Robin. After all, Robin was a famed songstress. Little Mingyin, you must grow up fast. March 7th chirped to Robin's belly. Sister March 7th has so many fun toys and so many beautiful dresses ready for you. That's right. That's right. And it's a special gift, too, Elysia added, eyes full of expectation. Robin shook her head, helpless but warmed by their enthusiasm. With so many people eagerly awaiting the child, little Mingyin would grow up loved. Robin glanced at March 7th and Elysia, so eager, calling themselves sisters, and inwardly laughed. By anyone's logic, they weren't sisters to little Mingyin. With Lu Jingming's ways, March 7th and Elysia would be more like her mothers. Chapter 286, Vita and Fireworks, Sun Moon Empire, Mingdu. Skyscrapers shot up like mushrooms after rain, piercing the clouds. Their glass facades glittered in the sunlight, turning the city into a mirage of light and steel. On the crisscrossing tracks, Spirit Tool trams roared past, their frames humming with faint azure Spirit Tool energy, while various Spirit Tool airships hung in the sky. Between the high rises, giant Spirit Tool screens flickered nonstop, looping promotional footage for the All-Continent Advanced Spirit Master Elite Tournament. Stirring music and commentary streamed from loudspeakers, spreading the excited atmosphere through every corner of the city. Even against Sea Abyss City, Mingdu's prosperity was no small thing. Its area and population were vast. If not for Sea Abyss City's deep heritage and the presence of a genius beyond his time, Mingdu might well be the continent's undisputed first city. By land area, tens of millions in population, and leading Spirit Tool technology, it already outpaced any city of the original Douluo Three Kingdoms. The simulated universe had accelerated Mingdu's growth even more. Civilian Spirit Tools, self-cleaning contraptions, temperature-controlled devices sprouted everywhere, making life easier and powering the Sun Moon Empire's rapid rise. With massive data and simulated experiments from the simulated universe, R&D efficiency doubled, and the technological gap with the old Three Kingdoms only widened. Even if others caught up, the stronger would only pull further ahead, the usual law of momentum. High in the sky, tens of kilometers away, the Hyperion drifted silently, its stealth mode blending it into the clouds. Lu Jingming, with Gu Yue and the others, descended from high altitude, repressing their qi and walking into Mingdu like ordinary travelers. Mingdu had no walls, but its entry procedures were strict, especially now, with the tournament about to open. Everyone had to enter through designated official roads, complete registration, and obtain permits. Those caught slipping in by patrolling soldiers risked immediate arrest. Lu Jingming and his group chose to enter through the main gate openly. Their stated purpose, participating in the Spirit Master Tournament, made an open approach far preferable. Sneaking in would be a disgrace. Coincidentally, the Shrek Academy team approaching from a distance had the same intention. As a top academic force on the continent, their actions were public and above board. Being discovered sneaking in would be humiliating. Mingdu Avenue, the city's main artery, was wide enough for 10 trams abreast and was the only approved route for outsiders. In front of the city entry registration office, amid armed soldiers and bustling staff, Lu Jingming sensed a faint life qi hiding in the shadows, a ninth-rank Spirit Tool Master. Possessing part of the Great Tree King's authority, few lives could hide from him. They really went all out, Lu Jingming thought. With the tournament drawing dangerous forces from across the continent, the Sun Moon Empire had even stationed a ninth-rank Spirit Tool Master at the gate. It was a clear signal that everyone's nerves were on edge. Retainers, forms born of negative emotions like Raiden Mai, though energy-based, manifested as solid entities and still had to follow registration rules. One Sun Moon Empire aim was to use entry registration to track retainers. Retainers usually looked human enough. Unless they revealed their strength, they could disguise themselves. Even the Empire's most advanced detection tools were ineffective against such beings. Those systems aimed at local spirit masters and spirit beasts did little to catch retainers. Registration was largely symbolic. The process itself was quick. Staff operated a special spirit tool camera, took each entrant's image, recorded a name, and allowed them to pass. It amounted to little more than a photo and a name, fast and superficial. Sun Moon Empire officials didn't appear obsessed with name authenticity. A photographed face was harder to fake. Even so, no one expected registration to capture every secret. It was more a deterrent than a foolproof filter. After registering, Lu Jingming was about to lead his group into Mingdu when a faint gaze settled on him, curious and probing. He frowned, glanced back, and couldn't help but smile. The gaze belonged to a young girl with long blue and pink hair, Wang Donger. But this Wang Donger felt different from the woman in his memory. Whether in male or female guise, her appearance hadn't changed, but her inner charm had. Lu Jingming understood immediately. Tang Wutong's awakening had changed her. It was much earlier than he'd expected, but given the recent upheavals on the Douluo Continent, a change in plans was plausible. What surprised him more was the woman beside Tang Wutong, dressed in a magnificent peacock costume, her skirt traced with golden patterns, exuding an alluring and dangerous charm with every movement. My goodness, Venus goddess Vita? Lu Jingming nearly lost his composure. Tang Wutong's retainer was actually her? If Vita had come, Mingdu was sure to be lively. With her personality, if she didn't make a scene, it wouldn't be true to her reputation. Near Tang Wutong and Vita stood two middle-aged men in gray robes. They kept their chi suppressed like ordinary people, but Lu Jingming detected a deep, oceanic life, chi, under the restraint, powerful and unfathomable. They must be Da Ming and Ming, he guessed. Though they masked their chi, their strength could not escape his perception. Beside them were a group of young people under 20, their dress and spirit fluctuations marking them as Clear Sky Sect disciples, the Clear Sky Sect team in the tournament. Lu Jingming glanced and withdrew his stare, leading his group into Mingdu. Mingdu Avenue was immense, its bluestone paving smooth and able to accommodate dozens walking side by side. Shops lined the road, offering a dazzling variety of spirit tool goods. Hawkers and bargaining voices rose and fell in a lively bustle. Interesting. There are many familiar faces, Vita murmured. She lightly tapped her lips, recalling two familiar figures she had just noticed, Yulan Dale and Raiden May. An intrigued expression crossed her face. Oh, beautiful elder sister, you're really here. I'm so happy, heh? A crisp, surprised voice chimed. A black-haired girl with twin ponytails and fiery red clothes, energetic and free, appeared behind Tang Wutong. Lovely little sister Sparkle, we're fated to meet. This is too interesting. Vita hesitated briefly and then revealed a bright smile, her eyes narrowing with delight. Right. Little sister thinks so too. Meeting elder sister at the start of this show is a golden beginning, isn't it? Sparkle clasped Vita's hand, leaning forward with a warm, intimate smile. Of course, little sister. Next, it's Fool's time. Vita returned the warmth, as if she and Sparkle were inseparable best friends, closer than blood. Tang Wutong looked at them in surprise. Their intimacy hinted at a close relationship. She knew Vita was a memory body of a character from another world, a retainer, and meeting an acquaintance of that sort almost certainly meant the other was a retainer too. This is little sister Sparkle, my kin and close friend, Vita introduced with a beaming smile. Oh, so you're elder sister's master? As expected of someone who can summon elder sister, you're truly a beautiful little sister, Sparkle said, her eyes lighting up. She stepped forward and behaved like an old friend. Tang Wutong felt awkward. Though Sparkle appeared roughly her age, Tang Wutong instinctively called her elder sister. Heh, little Wutong behaves so well. Elder sister has trained her well. Sparkle laughed, then glanced around. Trained? Tang Wutong's lips twitched. She didn't know how to respond. Vita chuckled softly. At one angle Tang Wutong couldn't see, Vita's expression hardened for a moment. This mischievous Sparkle was subtly trying to unsettle her. Lovely little sister Sparkle, when our stage arrives, we'll have plenty of time to have fun, okay? Vita said, hinting that Sparkle should find other pastimes until it was time to perform. Of course, elder sister. Some people, are opinionated, some self-absorbed, some self-serving, some deceitful. The fool mocks them all and has fun. Hey! Sparkle gushed happily, thrilled to have so much to enjoy. The main course usually comes last, she thought, so she would restrain her enthusiasm for now and find other entertainment. Tang Wutong didn't understand their conversation and felt bewildered. The two women claimed deep kinship, but their interplay hinted at a relationship not as harmonious as they professed. Elder sister, if you want fun, you must seize the right moment to appear. Hey! Sparkle added, then noticed Ma Xiaotao and the Shrek Academy group approaching from behind. She knew their reunion had to pause. Vita also saw Shrek Academy approaching, many of them and several strong members among them. One presence in particular made Vita feel an instinctive twinge of danger, which excited her. The more formidable the opponents, the better the story. As a memory body, she could indulge herself without fear. If her true body were here, she might be more cautious. Donger, it really is you, Xiao Xiao of Shrek Academy called out, bursting into joy. Wang Donger had been out of contact for a while. Xiao Xiao had worried something had happened. Now seeing her safe, she was overjoyed. Tang Wutong frowned slightly. Although she had inherited Wang Donger's memories, she hadn't fully embraced them. Out of a strange resistance, she'd avoided contacting Xiao Xiao and the others. Now avoiding was impossible. She squared her shoulders to face them. Xiao Xiao, long time no see. Tang Wutong forced herself into Wang Donger's tone and greeted her. Xiao Xiao froze, her smile faltering. She stared at Tang Wutong with surprise and uncertainty. The voice and smile matched Wang Donger's perfectly, but a subtle distance lingered, an unfamiliarity that made Xiao Xiao feel as if the person before her was not the Wang Donger she knew. Bei Bei, Jiang Nan, and Shu Sanxi, who had also approached, felt the same. Outwardly, the person was Wang Donger. Inwardly, her temperament had shifted, becoming alien and difficult to read. Donger, what's wrong with you? Xiao Xiao asked cautiously, worry in her voice. She wondered if Huo Yuhao had done something to change Wang Donger. Chapter 287, Shangguan Weier's Surrender. It seems I've been found out, Tang Wutong said, helplessness in her voice. I've recovered my childhood memories. I'm not Wang Donger anymore. My real name is Tang Wutong. Bei Bei and the others exchanged uneasy looks. Wang Donger had come from the Clear Sky sect, which originated from the Tang clan, so the surname Tang made sense. But had she truly been Wang Donger all along? Recovering her early memories and reverting to her original name was one thing. Acting so differently was another. The old Wang Donger had been self-reliant, proud, meticulous. The Tang Wutong before them seemed guileless, curious, almost bewildered by the world. The gap between the two personalities was disorienting. Suppressing their doubts, Xiao Xiao and the others reluctantly accepted her explanation and started calling her Wutong instead of Donger. They also learned that Tang Wutong was a master, and her servant Vita was close, almost sisterly, with Huohua. That piece of news drew strange looks from Xiao Xiao's group. To get along so well with someone as unpredictable and indulgent as Huohua, and to be called sisters, suggested a side of Vita none of them knew. Tang Wutong's obvious dependence on Vita also raised questions. The former Wang Donger had been fiercely independent and would never lean so heavily on someone else. On the journey to Mingdu and during registration, Tang Wutong's behavior unnerved them further. She was intensely curious about everything in Mingdu, always scanning and probing, yet at the same time her gaze made others feel distant, as if they existed in a different world. There was a cool, innate arrogance in her manner that set the group on edge. Wang Donger's pride had been the sort born of confidence and respect for strength, not the disdainful superiority Tang Wutong now displayed. Xiao Xiao lowered her eyes, disappointment and confusion in them. Bei Bei's hands clenched until his knuckles whitened. Jiang Nanan blinked slowly, long lashes hiding complicated emotions. The sunlight still brightened Mingdu's streets, but the Shrek group carried a thin veil of unease. Lu Jingming didn't immediately lead everyone to the Mingdu Grand Hotel, where the Sun Moon Empire had arranged lodging for participants. Only competitors and team leaders, those officially on the roster, like Wang Chuer and Mirrorflow, were allowed in. The rest had to find their own inns. Thankfully, Lu Jingming had contacts in Mingdu. Yingying, long time no see. You've been busy lately. Lu Jingming said softly as he approached a secluded three-story building. Waiting there was Ji Yingying, white-haired, a Yama of the Wuchang division who had been directing their covert operations in Mingdu for years. Beside her stood a girl with long pink hair and wheat-colored skin, Nana, watching Lu Jingming with open curiosity. She'd heard legends of this city lord, but had never seen him. At the sight of Lu Jingming, Ji Yingying's typically ice-cold expression thawed instantly, as if the emotionless mask had been replaced by a living smile. Nana, who had seen Ji Yingying's ruthless side many times, stared in stunned disbelief. Lu Jingming took Ji Yingying's hand and the two walked into the small building, a Wuchang Division safe house provided by the Common People's Alliance. Nana snapped out of her daze, bowed, and led Guyo and the others inside. Lu Jingming knew the safe house's secrecy was compromised the moment he entered openly. With the way he and his group had arrived, Sun Moon Empire spies would notice. That didn't bother him. After the Holy Grail War and the Spirit Master Tournament, Mingdu would be dangerous. Shu Tianran would likely seize any pretext to launch a unification war. If that happened, the Wuchang Division would become a prime target. The Common People's Alliance might be an ally, but their fate depended on the foresight of its leader, Shangguan Weier. It wasn't long before Shangguan Weier came to see him. "City Lord Lu, this should be our first formal meeting. Truly, a hero emerges among the young. You look like an immortal descended to this world," she cooed. Shangguan Weier wore a flowing red dress, black hair like a waterfall, and a face that could have been 16, youthful and dangerously alluring. Even Lu Jingming, who had seen his share of beautiful people, had to admit she carried a powerful charm. Shangguan had seen Lu Jingming's picture before and couldn't hide her admiration now. To her, Lu Jingming's bearing put even the Regent Shu Tianran in the shade. "Alliance leader Shangguan, there's no need for flattery. You didn't come just to praise me," Lu Jingming said calmly. Shangguan's next words stunned him. "City Lord Lu, I wish to bring the Common People's Alliance to pledge allegiance to you and leave Mingdu, leave the Sun Moon Empire." Lu Jingming blinked. The Common People's Alliance was no small force, one of Mingdu's three major underground powers, deeply embedded and tied to the aristocracy. Their leader, a titled Douluo adept at social maneuvering, was now proposing to submit to a city lord from another empire. It sounded impossible. "Alliance leader Shangguan, are you serious?" he asked. "I am," she replied, slipping into a feigned, trembling melancholy. "Shu Tianran has gone mad. I don't want to remain in Mingdu another moment." Guyue's eyes went cold at her performance. Ji Yingying, standing guard by Lu Jingming, also fixed Shangguan with an icy stare. Caught in those looks, Shangguan recovered her composure and spoke plainly. Her acting skills were polished. Years in Mingdu's circles had taught her how to present any face she wished, but now she dropped the pretense. Shangguan explained that the Common People's Alliance controlled much of Mingdu's entertainment and catering industries and had an extensive intelligence network. Lately, low-level members had disappeared. Prominent aristocrats, Shangguan knew well, had begun acting strange, behaving recklessly, even self-destructively. Some influential figures and a few rank 9 spirit engineers seemed altered, as if an invisible hand had warped the city's upper echelons. Shu Tianran himself looked normal outwardly, but when she faced him, she felt a bone-deep fear. Mingdu had changed, and the danger was spreading. Shangguan feared they had to act now or lose their chance. Lu Jingming listened, fingertips tapping the table as he weighed the situation. If she spoke truth, Mingdu was in far graver peril than it had appeared. Bringing the Common People's Alliance into Sea Abyss City would be a significant gain. Intelligence, networks, industries, and assets that could be leveraged. But why ask to pledge now, and why to him? "It's not impossible for you to pledge allegiance," Lu Jingming said slowly, "but I need to know what you bring me and why I should risk offending the Sun Moon Empire for this." Shangguan brightened at the opening. She outlined the Alliance's assets, networks, business holdings, and embedded contacts across Mingdu, and argued that Shu Tianran's focus on the Spirit Master Tournament and the Holy Grail War gave them a narrow window to leave before he could react. With Lu Jingming's strength, she reasoned, they could escape the danger in Mingdu. Lu Jingming did not commit on the spot. He had never planned to reject such an offer. Sea Abyss City needed talented people more than anything right now, but he preferred to integrate the alliance under controlled circumstances, not accept a sudden defection. Don't rush. Go prepare what you need. I'll notify you after the competition ends, he said. Shangguan nodded, restrained her impatience, and stood. She exchanged formal farewells and left the safe house. Lu Jingming watched her go, the gears of plans and contingencies already turning in his mind. Chapter 288, The Prototype of the Deity. Watching Shangguan Wei's receding figure fade into the distance, Lu Jingming fell into a long, pensive silence. Letting the Common People's Alliance in would undeniably strengthen Sea Abyss City, but it would also draw far more attention and firepower from the Sun Moon Empire. That, however, was not Lu Jingming's primary concern. The question was simple: were her words trustworthy? Guyue's brows knit, doubt clouded her eyes. It was hard to accept that the leader of such a large faction would abandon her hard-won influence on a mere hunch and defect to a foreign power. There had to be deeper reasons. Lu Jingming nodded slowly. She's hiding something, he said. But I believe her will to join us is sincere. Her fear of Shu Tianran is real. A faint, knowing smile curved Lu Jingming's lips. Collaborating with the Doom Monarch was suicide. Those who followed paths of annihilation were consumed by destructive ideology. To them, civilization was a cancer to be extirpated. Shu Tianran was merely a tool to be used. Shangguan Wei's behavior made that painfully clear. Many of the great nobles must have already been swayed by the Doom Monarch's doctrine. They were no longer the people they once were. Compared to the Doom Monarch, even a fragment of him, Shu Tianran was like a firefly against the moon. Over eons, the Doom Monarch had destroyed countless civilizations and met every kind of hero. Ambitious overlords with glaring flaws, heroes like Shu Tianran, would sooner or later be absorbed into the Antimatter Legion, their power turned to serve destruction. Shu Tianran may still believe he held the initiative, but the reality could be otherwise. Shangguan Wei was not like Mirrorflow or other high-ranking Sun Moon Empire figures. She had clawed her way up from the bottom, lived among nobles long enough to understand them, and her alliance operated primarily among ordinary people. She'd be more sensitive to subtle corruption spreading in the shadows, changes Mirrorflow might never notice. That sensitivity explained her urgency to flee. Staying in Mingdu now was tantamount to sitting and waiting for death. Moreover, decades of the Common People's Alliance's resources, money, logistics, were in her hands. Before leaving, she could siphon those resources and exploit the nobles one last time. Lu Jingming found her choice understandable. To remain was to be absorbed into the antimatter furnace. As a titled Douluo, her essence would be enough to birth an excellent void trooper. Starhowl, this is really a tricky problem, Lu Jingming said, narrowing his eyes. A shadow of excitement flickered in his gaze. His fingers tapped the armrest in a casual rhythm. Guyue was perplexed. Is Starhowl really that terrifying? We have overwhelming strength. Why be so wary? From her perspective, the forces Lu Jingming had arranged, both overt and covert, were overwhelmingly powerful. Mirrorflow on the field was already at divine rank. Dan Heng hidden in the shadows was like a dragon, on par with Mirrorflow. Add in other arrangements, and Guyue couldn't fathom why Lu Jingming trembled. With her main body largely restored and able to merge into the Silver Dragon King at will, they should be invincible. You're right, Lu Jingming replied. We're unlikely to lose, but trouble is unavoidable. Think of Starhowl as an overpowered Robin, a Robin specialized entirely in combat. Guyu fell silent. Robin's auxiliary abilities were formidable. Even the fourth-ranked top 10 vicious beast, the Emerald Swan BG, paled beside Robin's support. Robin's power of harmony, understanding, support, coordination, could also assimilate, fuse, and cluster. Starhowl, however, was a supercharged version. Shangguan Wei had noticed strange alterations among nobles in the Sun Moon Empire's upper echelons. Those changes were the result of assimilation by Starhowl's ideology, first understanding destruction, then supporting it, next cooperating, and finally wholly embracing it. Where Robin relied on ideals and song to win hearts, Starhowl forcibly imposed its doctrine. It did not politely persuade, it conquered the will. Lu Jingming was unsurprised the ideological rot had reached Mingdu's elite. This is getting interesting. Facing something like the Doom Monarch is a rare experience. He clenched his left hand. In an instant, lightning flickered, and a lightning divine ring shimmered into being behind him, a brilliant, impossible light cutting through the air with sovereign force. Guyui's pupils shrank in disbelief. Lu Jingming had not yet reached title Douluo, yet the embryonic form of a god position had taken shape. That overturned long-held assumptions on the Douluo Continent. According to common wisdom, one must reach rank 99 spirit power before even being qualified to bear a god position. Even an embryonic god position should be impossible without such a foundation. Lu Jingming felt a different kind of power emanating from the stigmata, sparse in quantity, but utterly unlike spirit power in essence. This divine force, though minute, was immensely potent. Activating a spirit ability with this divine trace produced effects far beyond using ordinary spirit power. His spirit power increased at an astounding rate, and at this pace, he would likely break through to titled Douluo well before 20, an unprecedented legend. Yet compared to his other breakthroughs, spirit rank growth was a small matter. The embryonic forms of his lightning and life god positions had condensed and could manifest divine rings. They already aided him in absorbing external energy inside stigmata space to build divine force. The force was still weak, but divine force is divine force, its potential far beyond spirit power. His Black Abyss White Flower spirit was also evolving, becoming a companion divine artifact. A few more evolutions, and it would detach from the spirit system and become a true divine artifact. The Spirit Master system had its merits. Divinities gave their tool spirits the chance to become companion divine artifacts, which could grow with their masters and break limits, unleashing inconceivable power. Lu Jingming's conditions were extraordinary. He had taken Huo Yuhao's place as Son of Luck. The luck of Douluo Star, long coveted by sea god Tangsan, was his to use. Snow Empress and Guyu, tied to the far north and the Star Do Great Forest, were closely connected to him. Their fortunes could be called upon if needed. Cultivation resources were not a worry. The Black Tower's reach extended into the god realm and beyond, continuously acquiring materials. The Thousand Worlds One ride allowed access to parallel world treasures. And on the path of cultivation, he had top-tier mentors, Mirrorflow, the Black Tower, Raiden Mei, Greater Lord Rakatavada, all ready to guide him. With such perfect conditions, the foundations he had quietly laid were finally ready to bear fruit. Near the gate exit, Shangguan Weier paused and was intercepted. Leaning against a tree with a lazy elegance stood a blonde girl from St. Freya Academy, a pink-haired attendant by her side. Shangguan Weier started, then pressed a sincere smile to her face. "It seems sending you to the academy was the wisest choice I ever made," she said. "That's right, I'm glad I went," Ye Guai replied. If she had not entered St. Freya, she might never have seen the world beyond her hiding place. She could have been discovered and destroyed by the Holy Spirit cult's evil spirit masters. She was genuinely grateful to Shangguan Weier. The leader had taken her in and planned a future for her, a kindness Ye Gui would never forget. Shangguan Weier looked helpless. "I have no choice. If I don't leave now, I'll never get out." She slowly removed a cosmetic contact lens from her left eye. Beneath it, Guyu and Remia saw a red pupil, the iris burning with destructive light. What's this?" Yegi took an involuntary step back. Under that red gaze, her body trembled, disbelief and fear warred on her face. Remia's smile vanished, her expression hardening. The raw aura of destruction radiated cruelty, as though it could annihilate everything in existence, including itself, without hesitation. "Do you remember my spirit?" Shangguan Weier put the contact back on and forced a bitter smile. "7 emotions, heavenly rhyme zither." Ye Gai answered in a heavy voice. "Yes, the 7 emotions heavenly rhyme zither. It may not be a pure mental system spirit, but I know mental abilities. My mental force is stronger than an ordinary titled Douluo's." Shangguan Weier allowed a trace of relief. If her spirit and abilities weren't capable of some resistance, she might already have succumbed like those nobles. "I used my mental abilities to separate my soul from my mental force, to try to resist," she said, voice trembling. "But that destructive will keeps gnawing at me. It corrodes my resolve, inching its way to replace me, to completely destroy me." Then her words hung in the air, heavy and terrifying. Yigei and Remy exchanged a look, confusion, fear, and a dawning realization of how grave the threat truly was. Chapter 289, Mark of Destruction. Shangguan Wei's face twisted with pain. She trembled, clutching her left eye, as if that alone could halt the assimilation of the destructive will. At that moment, her usual tough facade fell away, revealing a vulnerability she rarely allowed anyone to see. In a world where the strong prey on the weak, she knew all too well how quickly a woman who showed weakness could be exploited. For years, she had disguised herself, navigating danger with cold cunning. Even before perceptive people like Lu Jingming and Gu Yu, she had hidden her abnormality. But in front of Ye Gui, she let down her guard without realizing it. Ye Gui was one of the few she trusted. Having finally confessed, she no longer intended to hide. Sea Abyss City was her last hope. She had nowhere else to turn. "I'll go find Ming. I'll beg him. He can do anything." Ye Gui cried, eyes red, teeth clenched. To her, Lu Jingming was almost godlike. If he acted, he could surely save Shangguan Wei from this fate. She couldn't bear the thought of Shangguan Wei being swallowed by that terrifying power and turned into its pawn. No need, Ming can't save her. The mark of destruction has already buried itself deep in her soul. Release is her only salvation. Jingliu's figure appeared quietly, the cold light of her longsword flickering in the dimness. Her voice was flat, matter-of-fact, but Ye Gai caught the flash of killing intent in her eyes. "No, Teacher Jingliu, there must be another way. Lady Herta, she must have a method." Ye Gui spread her arms frantically, shielding Shangguan Wei like a desperate mother, her voice trembling with urgency. Lady Herta's knowledge gave her a sliver of hope. Shangguan Wei looked at Ye Gai and felt warmth flood her chest. A relieved smile briefly brightened her pale face, then curdled into a bitter one. She'd concealed this from the start because she feared precisely this moment. She knew better than anyone how the mark of destruction had become like a maggot in her bones, binding and merging with her soul. To purge it would be to destroy the soul itself. From the moment she was marked by destruction, fate's gears had turned toward an irreversible outcome. She had long since lost any real chance of being saved. Seeing Ye Gui had kindled an irrational hope, a tiny wish for a miracle, but she knew the truth. "Herta isn't omnipotent," Jingliu said, frowning. As the former swordmaster of Luofu, she had weathered countless storms and knew the terror of the Antimatter Legion. Those targeted by destruction were like beasts trapped in a quagmire. Few ever escaped that doom. Even Herta, an emanator of Now, could do little against a soul deeply assimilated by destruction. This simply wasn't her specialty. If anyone could help, it would be Lady Ruan Mei, a genius in life and soul domains. But Ruan Mei was not in this world now. Distant aid couldn't save a fire at the door. Shangguan Wei's fate was essentially sealed. Shangguan Wei had acted decisively when she first realized she was afflicted. Using her powerful mental spirit ability, she had split her soul and mental force to temporarily slow the assimilation. But it was a fragile partition, a corner of her soul sealed off, hardly a true separation. She knew that fully splitting her soul would leave it incomplete, risking dissipation and total annihilation of her conscious self. She was only a titled Douluo, not a transcendent being with exceptional divine sense. Her mastery over soul techniques had limits, and the assimilation methods of Doom Monarch Star Howl were overwhelming. A casual spill of his power could be like a natural disaster to her. Even if she used every scrap of strength to isolate part of her soul, she couldn't escape Star Howl's pull. Where destructive power raged, few survived. Her spirit's resistance was unique, but a mere bandage against an abyss. Jingliu judged Shangguan Wei beyond saving. Better to end it now than allow her to be turned into a puppet of Star Howl and later harm others. Short pain now would be preferable to long suffering and danger. It was a mercy. Terrifying power. Istaru sat atop a branch, bare feet dangling, her tone as languid as ever. Even she, an existence who manipulated time's authority, felt powerless here. Time could change many things, but a destructive mark embedded deep in the soul could not be easily undone. If it were only a physical issue, Abyss Flower might help, but the soul, I'm sorry. Durandal shook her head, regret plain on her face. The weapon in her hand wielded creation and decomposition, effective against bodies, but unable to reach into the depths of the soul. She agreed with Jingliu, eliminating the threat now, though harsh, might prevent greater harm later. The small building's cramped space amplified the ominous aura that leaked from Shangguan Weier's left eye. Followers, beings condensed from negative emotions and energy, felt the destructive power immediately. Raiden Mei watched quietly at the edge, eyes complicated. Shangguan Weier's plight reminded her painfully of those in her own world, corrupted by Honkai, people devoured by a power that left only despair and tragedy. Lu Jingming stepped outside at the commotion and sensed the faint mark of destruction. Seeing Ye Gi blocking Jingliu, he immediately understood. He hadn't expected Star Howl to tamper with Shangguan Weier so early. Someone like Shangguan Weier, without a strong backing and with middling strength, was a prime target. She had hidden herself too well. Her spirit and its strange effects had attracted danger. Star Howl's mark had branded Shangguan Weier. The harmony-tainted wound of destruction made her escape almost impossible. Even Herta would likely struggle. Mebius would be of limited help. The only person Lu Jingming could think of with a track record of dealing with such marks was Ruan Mei. But she wasn't here. "Teacher, please don't act yet. Ruan Mei might have a solution." Lu Jingming pleaded, looking at Ye Gai's determined face and feeling helpless. He didn't want to give up on Shangguan Weier. Talented people were rare. If the mark had been left by another Doom Monarch, it might be hopeless, but Star Howl's influence carried a harmony imprint. Perhaps Ruan Mei, a harmony user, could help. Even if Ruan Mei was far weaker than Star Howl, this was an unintentional overflow, not the full force of an emanator. Jingliu, sword still raised, lowered the blade when Lu Jingming made his decision. She no longer needed to play executioner if there was a sliver of hope. "Aiming, thank you," Ye Gai breathed, grateful. She had feared Jingliu would strike. "Don't thank me yet. Whether she can be saved is still unknown." Lu Jingming shook his head. The Doom Monarch's methods were inscrutable and dangerous. Hope was dim. "Heh, leave her to me. I'm intrigued." A green figure slid into the doorway. Mebius's forked gaze fixed on Shangguan Weier's left eye with greedy curiosity. From Jingliu's earlier stance, this was a problem even Herta might not solve. That made it all the more interesting. Mebius had always been fascinated by life research. Studying a remnant of Star Howl's power, an emanator on par with the Hersher of the End in their world, was irresistible. The thought of analyzing such a thing made her lick her lips. Shangguan Weier felt a chill. In front of Mebius, she felt as small and helpless as a lab specimen. She looked at Lu Jingming imploringly, silently begging him not to hand her over. "Don't break her. She's very useful." Lu Jingming frowned, then said words that crushed Shangguan Weier's hopes. Mebius was dangerous, but as a scientist, she could potentially find a cure, so long as she didn't destroy the subject. Moreover, Mebius still owed Lu Jingming a favor. He expected she'd spare Shangguan Weier while conducting research. "Little Gai, save me!" Shangguan Weier cried to Ye Gai, her voice almost tearful. Ye Gai could only look helpless. As long as Shangguan Weier cooperated, Mebius's experiments were rarely instantly lethal, especially with Lu Jingming's word given. Besides, Mebius would begrudgingly return the favor rather than risk Lu Jingming colluding with Elysia to force her into some humiliating punishment. "Heh, come with me." Mebius ignored the protests. A massive dark serpent uncoiled from the void realm, enveloping Shangguan Weier and dragging her into another space. Mebius vanished with it, taking only her target, the residual influence of Star Howl on Shangguan Weier. "Don't worry, I'll return a whole Alliance leader Shangguan to you, probably." Lu Jingming tried to comfort Ye Gai, though doubt crept into his voice. Mebius's methods were unpredictable. No one could promise what would happen to Shangguan Weier in her hands. Ye Gai's mouth twitched. If that was comfort, it was a poor one. Chapter 290, Lord of Extinction, Star Howl, outside the southern city of Mingdu, at the encampment of the Fire Phoenix Spirit Master Legion, one of the 5 great protector hands, an oppressive silence hung over everything. Juzi, in her uniform, walked alone through a camp that had once thrummed with life. Now it felt like a graveyard. Her sisters, who had laughed and trained beside her, stood motionless like puppets. From the outside, they still looked human, but their auras were cold and dead, like stone statues. The contrast with who they had been was brutal. Memories flashed through Juzi's mind. The tacit teamwork on the battlefield, the sweat and encouragement on the training grounds, the easy laughter of off-duty afternoons, the teasing requests for gifts from some of the younger misses. All of it had slipped into an impossible dream. Her hand tightened around the command talisman at her waist. The light in her eyes faded, and a wave of self-reproach washed over her. If not for her, if she had done something different, these women, who had been family, might not have met this fate. At first glance, they were unchanged, but Juzi knew the truth. Their inner selves had been devoured by the embers of destruction. Emotion had been stripped from them. They were colder and more numb than machines. Now they looked through her, as though she were transparent. She bit her lip until it bled. The metallic taste trickled down the corner of her mouth. The physical pain was nothing compared to the ache inside. She forced back the tears. There was no space to be weak. Whoever she was about to face would not tolerate it. A single lapse could drag her into an abyss of damnation. The command tent she had once used now belonged to another. At its entrance stood an older woman in a scarlet uniform, a long sword at her side engraved with a fire phoenix. Her face bore weather. Her posture was straight. This was Luan Feng, the Fire Phoenix Douluo, the former leader, now deputy of the Fire Phoenix Legion. A level 94 titled Douluo and a level 9 Spirit Master, she commanded a Fire Phoenix sword spirit of terrifying power. Luan Feng looked up when Juzi approached. For a moment, a fleeting flash, something like recognition and warmth, flickered in her eyes. It was enough to stop Juzi. She swallowed, throat tight, and a single, choking "I'm sorry" escaped her. Juzi could not bear to meet the older woman's gaze. She passed the deputy and stepped into the tent. The flash in Luan Feng's eyes burned briefly, then was gone. The cold closed over her like frost. For a woman of her caliber, that tiny tremor was the last ember of humanity snuffed out. Against the Doom Monarch's force, even she had been forced into surrender. Inside the tent, the fabric of reality shifted. The cramped interior dissolved, and Juzi found herself standing on a fragment of meteor amid a boundless starfield, an anomalous dimension with floating planet shards drifting in sterile silence. Juzi had entered this void before. Its desolation had become familiar. Ahead, like a figure from myth, stood the Doom Monarch, Star Howl. Her beauty was flawless, otherworldly, skin pale as untouched snow, hair like white silk cascading down, robes matchingly white. She looked like a being removed from the mortal world. But her eyes were hollow, indifferent. In them, Juzi felt the birth and death of stars. 2 ink-black rings of stars circled above and below the Doom Monarch, radiating danger. Around her hung a low, dissonant hum, like the sound of celestial bodies tearing apart, warping the surrounding space with an illusory heat. The power emanating from Star Howl exceeded reason. A servant ought never to hold such strength. It could threaten the Douluo Continent itself. But the negative energy pouring from the black hole of the Tomb of the Gods was vast, and under its catalysis, something like Star Howl had been birthed. She restrained herself to move on the continent, but her nature was destruction. She did not see restraint as a virtue. Where raw annihilation was required, she would not waste efforts appeasing the world will. Instead, she used method and calculation. She opened her mouth, and the voice came like a decree from the void. Execute the mission. Every syllable slammed into Juzi's mind like a hammer. The pressure was mental and absolute, squeezing the breath from her. Cold sweat poured from her forehead. Her body trembled. Despair had visited her countless times. Suicide had seemed at moments like a way out, an end to the endless torment. But hatred and fear kept her clinging to life. She also carried Lu Jingming's contingency measures, which made suicide nearly impossible. And even were she to die, Juzi suspected Star Howl had ways to prolong her existence and keep her working toward that cold creed of annihilation. Lu Jingming, if nothing else, would not allow her to die so needlessly. If she had been expendable, she would already have been assimilated into the Antimatter Legion, another walking corpse under Star Howl's command. Star Howl was a machine of purpose, precise, efficient, unswerving. Preparations complete, players in place, she would not delay. She would destroy with mathematical certainty. "Do it," Juzi managed to choke out. Her voice shook, every word forced from between clenched teeth. Instantly, the Doom Monarch's power hit her like a physical blow. Resistance was meaningless. The starry void collapsed, and she was ripped back into the cramped tent. Her feet hit the ground, and she staggered, gasping, an invisible weight pressed on her chest like a millstone. The tense furnishings wavered at the edges, distorted by the transition. The cosmic chill of Star Howl's domain clung to her like frost beneath the skin. Juzi steadied herself and stepped outside. The camp had been formed into ranks. Under the moonlight, the members of the Fire Phoenix Legion stood like statues, perfect formation, precise movements, but utterly inhuman, beautiful puppets emptied of life. Despair slammed into Juzi, a cold pit deepening in her gut. She glanced instinctively toward the Mingdu Imperial Palace. Shu Tianran, regent, schemer, was no doubt still wrapped up in his ambitions, believing he controlled the situation. He fancied himself a partner or manipulator of Star Howl's power. In Star Howl's eyes, he was nothing but an instrument, a pawn to be used and discarded. In her calculus, there were no allies, only things that would be destroyed when their time came. Juzi knew Shu Tianran's plan in full. He meant to use the Mingdu Spirit Master Tournament to gather servants, masters, and sect forces from the empires, seize defeated sect members, then at the end unite the Holy Spirit sect and the Sun Moon Empire, and backed by the Antimatter Legion, strike a final blow at remaining masters and servants. He had built contingencies beneath Mingdu, underground defenses, because his rule rested on those commoners. Without them, his ambitions were hollow. He had accepted the risk of great losses in Mingdu for his greater goal. But he had counted without Star Howl's refusal to be scripted. The tournament hadn't even begun properly. Forces were still settling at the Mingdu Grand Hotel, yet Star Howl had already decided to act. Juzi inhaled and forced herself calm. She pressed a small spirit tool concealed at her waist. Dark gold, finely carved, it emitted a faint hum and sent a ripple of energy outward into the night. Then, with a slow, steady motion, she opened her left palm. The blood-red command talisman flared to life, erupting into a blinding red light that tore through the darkness and shot into the sky. The red light coalesced into a towering totem of flame high above Mingdu, a sigil of destruction. The blaze at its summit seemed to set the night itself alight. This was the totem Star Howl used to signal and mobilize her forces. When Star Howl herself gave the order, the Antimatter Legion would obey as though they were her limbs, acting across vast distances without such a show. But Juzi was only Star Howl's proxy in this moment. She needed the visible, dramatic signal to marshal the Legion. The flaming totem burned like a verdict, and all at once the machinery of annihilation began to turn. Chapter 291, Tramplers. At that moment, countless people in Mingdu craned their necks to the sky and saw an impossible, terrible pattern blazing against the night. Some cried out, some stared in curiosity, but most were simply confused, unable to make sense of what they were seeing. In a luxury suite at the top of the Mingdu Grand Hotel, the group from Shrek Academy had gathered to talk about the upcoming Spirit Master Tournament. They all froze when a towering column of red light flared outside the window. One by one they rose and moved to the glass, faces tightening as they took in the sight. "Oh, Antimatter Legion, terrifying," Huohua said with a tone that was half mischief, half wary respect. As a masked fool, she knew that mark of destruction only too well. The symbol appearing over Mingdu meant the Antimatter Legion's iron hooves were already at the city's gate. Jingyuan and Qingque recognized it instantly, too. Qingque's face drained of color. Her mouth fell open and her breath shuddered inwardly. "It's over, it's over. This is exactly the omen from the divination. The Antimatter Legion, sitting at the same table as the abominations of abundance. With my little arms and legs, I can't even fight off the weakest Shuju. I'd be crushed. Thank goodness General Jingyuan is here." She shot a relieved glance at Jingyuan. He was a solid anchor. She could relax a little. Jingyuan himself, however, wore a look of grave concentration. He stared at the burning tower in the sky with knitted brows. The Legion itself was terrifying, yes, but what worried him most was the mastermind pulling its strings. "Antimatter Legion? What's that?" Ma Xiaotao and the others looked puzzled and turned to Jingyuan and Qingque. Asking Huohua would probably only get a flippant answer. Jingyuan's explanation would carry weight. "Hey, why are you asking only them? Don't leave me out." Huohua pouted, hands on hips, acting affronted. "Go away, you little brat. We haven't time to play." Ma Xiaotao's expression hardened. Since the red light had appeared, The atmosphere in Mingdu had shifted. A heavy, oppressive dread was settling over the city. A force that only brings destruction, she murmured. Prepare yourselves, Jingyuan said, his voice low and forceful. This land is likely about to face an unprecedented tribulation. How interesting. Someone's not following the script. Huohua thumped her chest theatrically, mock afraid but clearly stirred. Huohua, didn't expect them to move so fast. Revelation. Jean suddenly clutched her head and trembled, her face paling. Shards of images crashed through her mind. Mingdu reduced to charred ruins, buildings toppled and mounds of corpses heaped in the streets. Once lively neighborhoods smeared with dried blood, the whole city under a blood-red sky, wrapped in a silence that felt like death. That bone-deep despair struck at her soul. Little Vina, get your people ready. The slaughter is about to begin. Fei Xiao's eyes sharpened. The air around her seemed to cool under her aura. The destructive presence arriving carried a dead, violent silence that set her blood on edge. She had the unnerving feeling she might run into some old acquaintances tonight. This kind of pure destruction? Ugly. Not my style, Vita said, her lazy expression hardening into a cold line. Her carefully planned grand entrance had just been wrecked by this sudden turn. Worse, this kind of mindless annihilation didn't appeal to her. What is that, Saber? Nan Chuchu stared up at the burning tower, confusion and apprehension making her small face anxious. She grabbed Artoria's sleeve. Master, be careful! Artoria's voice was solemn. Her clothes shifted into silver-white armor that shone with flowing light. An Excalibur, wrapped in wind elements, revealed a faint outline in her hand. I sensed something extremely dangerous approaching. Prepare for battle. Her vigilance was razor-sharp. The prickling crisis against her skin was the same old battlefield alert from her past. Battle? Here in Mingdu. Nanchuku's eyes widened in disbelief. Not only she, but Nan Shuishui and the Earth Dragon sect disciples were stunned. Why would war erupt in the heart of prosperous Mingdu? When Lu Jingming received Juzi's urgent message, his heart dropped. Seeing the totem of destruction blazing in the sky, he understood at once. He raised his right hand and called out, "Bwur." A soft green light shimmered, and the white-haired, green-eyed goddess appeared, wrapped in a faint natural aura. She studied the sky with a solemn nod. I know what to do. Before she finished speaking, her figure dissolved into countless motes of light and vanished, like a drop merging into the sea. What is happening? Guyue Zhanglexuan and the others exchanged bewildered looks. None of them truly grasped the meaning of that strange signal in the heavens. Tsk, I underestimated this doom monarch, Lu Jingming muttered, rubbing his brow. You really can't reason with her by ordinary logic. Xingqiao had no interest in playing out a Holy Grail war. She wanted to crush everything outright. With covert backing from the Sun Moon Empire, she had set a scheme in motion. Now she had the power to sweep everything aside, and what chilled him was that Xingqiao didn't care about collateral victims. Mingdu still held tens of millions of Sun Moon citizens. Wang Chuor and the others were still trying to process the sudden catastrophe when a buzzing sound rolled across the city like a scream piercing the soul. It was vast and ancient-sounding, like billions of stars dying at once, bearing the chaos of the universe's birth and the terrible silence of its end. Mingdu's air itself seemed to split. Then the horror began. The space above Mingdu cracked like a pane of glass struck by a hammer, spiderwebbing with black patterns. Rifts in space opened, dark and hungry, edged with unstable, flickering energy. Buildings nearest those rifts warped and twisted as if grabbed by invisible hands, collapsing into rubble. Some structures were cleanly cleaved in two by the spatial tears, the cut edges smooth as mirrors. People caught unaware became instant victims, passers-by torn apart as if by some surgical rift, blood and organs splattering the streets. Screams and shouts erupted, the city thrown into chaos. From the dark rifts figures began to step out, beings radiating a fierce destructive aura. Some were twisted shadows, others seemed formed from pure negative energy, wrapped in a cold, deathly silence. They poured into Mingdu and launched into indiscriminate slaughter, smashing through walls, trampling civilians underfoot. Where they went, only ruin and corpses remained. Hundreds of powerhouses sprang into the air from across the city, guardians, spirit users from major houses, only to stare in disbelief as the dark shapes swarmed forth. They're Shuju, Void minions. It is the Antimatter Legion, someone shouted. Fei Xiao planted herself on a rooftop like a pine and notched an arrow. A shaft of condensed light formed, rocketing through the sky like a meteor. Mid-flight, it split into a storm of arrows that rained down on a cluster of Suju. Light exploded among them, shredding many into drifting wisps of dark particles that vanished. But for the relentless tide pouring from the rifts, such losses were insignificant. More Shuju surged forward over the remains of their comrades, their shadows sweeping the streets. Buildings dissolved where they passed, life withered. Bastards! Ye Yulin, Star Duoluo, surged with golden and silver light until twin sun and moon disks hovered above her. They spun and unleashed billions of sharp light arrows that cascaded down like a waterfall. The missiles hit the Shuju and detonated into ripples of energy, but the monsters barely flinched. Strange runes appeared on their forms, and they absorbed most of the strikes. Ye Yulin's face went pale. Their resistance far exceeded her expectations. "Shu Tianran, what are you doing?" Jing Hongchen fumed as he watched the carnage below. These were the weapons Shu Tianran had secretly been researching, so why had they turned on Mingdu? He whirled toward the imperial palace, suspicion and fury in his eyes. "Protect the civilians. Defend Mingdu." Ye Yulin's roar cracked like thunder and jolted the stunned defenders into action. Spirit Saints formed shields over panicked crowds, while Spirit Duoluo unleashed their most devastating abilities, a web of energy flaring above the city. Lu Jingming's spear and the black-red decomposition thunder tore a humanoid armored Shuju, a Lueduoge, a marauder, into particles, but his face grew grimmer. Hundreds of marauders swarmed like a coordinated colony, each with combat power near Spirit King level, moving as one. Shu Tianran wouldn't just watch Mingdu burn, he muttered, fingers brushing the black abyss white flower. Either he's controlled, or this plays into his plan. Bang! Wang Chuer's golden dragon spear drove clean through a marauder's head, shattering its core. She retracted her spear and watched the remains disintegrate with a solemn look. Their offense and defense are ridiculous. If this keeps up, our spirit power will drain. Luduoge swarmed the streets in endless waves. Further off, Jianta's centaur-like tramplers loomed. Over a dozen meters tall, their torsos armored, their lower halves horse-like with bony plating. Massive bows glowed with cruel wind elements. One trampler drew and let fly. Wind condensed into a spear several zhang long that shrieked through the air and tore a residential building apart. The residents inside had been lucky and already fled. Feng Jianzong, Elder Ling Kanghai, appeared immediately beside the trampler, his aura flaring as an 8-ring spirit duo. His long sword became a cyan stream of light, and he launched a full-power wind-imbued sword chi. When it struck the trampler's armored body, it left only a shallow white mark. How is that possible? Ling Kanghai's pupils shrank. His strike alone could have cleft a refined iron city wall, yet it barely dented the opponent's exoskeleton. "Elder, fall back!" a disciple cried. The trampler turned its cold head. Its right arm swirled with a visible vortex of wind blades, then slammed down. A wind slash dozens of meters long ripped the air. The ground beneath split into jagged ravines where it passed. Spirit Avatar, cracking wind. Ling Kanghai roared. His spirit ring fused with his sword and swelled into a cyan giant blade, dozens of meters long, that he planted before him. The collision was deafening. The great sword shuddered under the wind strike. Ling Kanghai spat blood and was hurled backward with his blade, crashing through half a building. He stared at the gaping chasm splitting the street and felt a cold dread take him. The force behind that blow had reached titled Douluo level. Chapter 292, The Furious Zhongli Wu. What made Ling Kanghai feel even more desperate in that moment was that from a single glance at the sky a moment before, he had seen at least 100 of those tramplers, Jiantage. If every one of them had that kind of strength, it was nightmare fuel. Retreat, break through to the east side of the city. Clutching his bleeding chest, Ling Kanghai forced himself to stand and led the surviving disciples toward the weaker sections of the defenses. The smaller sects and academies had already plunged into despair. In one street, an academy team, led by only 2 spirit saints, was surrounded by over 10 marauders, Luduoge. Their defensive spirit abilities were like paper under the marauders' blades. Screams rose in quick succession. From the shadows, several streaks of dark blue energy shot out and struck the two spirit saints dead center, the long-range sniping of the Eliminators. The spirit saints froze, then were torn apart by the swarming marauders. Phoenix roar of the heavens. Ma Xiaotao's figure blazed into the fray like living fire. Her phoenix true fire took the shape of a giant fiery bird and swallowed dozens of void minions, Shuju. The scorching flame warped the space around it. The void minions shrieked as their dark shells melted and dripped, revealing writhing cores of negative energy. Even so, they dragged their burning bodies forward to pounce on crying civilians. Troublesome things, Ma Xiaotao snorted. Huge phoenix wings unfurled behind her, and the intensity of her flames spiked. The firebird tore through the Shuju, igniting their cores outright. Artoria shielded Nanchuchu and slowly raised the sword of promised victory. The brilliant runes moving along its blade flowed like living things, converging into a dazzling pillar of light that shot into the sky. Excalibur! With her cry, the pillar slammed down like a meteor, vaporizing every void minion in the street into particles and opening a vacuum several hundred meters long through the dense enemy ranks. Quick! Follow the path of light and break through! Nanchuchu shouted to the panicked civilians, but chaos had already taken most of them. They fled blindly. Teacher, Baishushu peered from behind Sakeke, watching a void minion tear apart a fleeing family of 3. Her face went pale. Sakeke's expression darkened as she looked over the widening battlefield. She raised a delicate hand. Terrifying icy white chi spread instantly, freezing hundreds of void minions into glassy statues. Save one if you can. She shaped dozens of ice cones on her fingers and shot them at the Suju, trying to ambush civilians. But the spatial rifts that kept tearing open farther away told her this was barely a drop in the ocean. From Mingdetang, spirit tool cannon roars burst out, but quickly thinned. A trampler that had stepped from a rift casually swatted a 3-story-high cannon tower into scrap. Its chest sent forth a dark energy wave that swept like a tide, turning the street into scorched earth. Dozens of spirit masters behind the tower were annihilated mid-scream. Evil creature! Ma Xiaotao roared, charging forward as the Phoenix True Fire coalesced into a physical form and slammed into the trampler's wave. Boom! Flames and dark energy detonated into a mushroom cloud. Ma Xiaotao was driven back, a smear of crimson at the corner of her mouth. She wiped it away, and a bloodier battle intent flared in her eyes. Interesting. Again! On the high platform outside the commander's tent, Juzi watched the flames over Mingdu and dug her nails into her palm until they bled. The command seal in her hand glowed ominously red. Each time she moved, dozens more spatial rifts tore across Mingdu, and more void minions poured out. "No, don't," she whispered, trembling, tears finally falling. Some invisible force was controlling her. Every time the seal lit, it felt like a knife across her heart. Her message to Lu Jingming had been her last struggle. She had no other way to fight it. She could only watch helplessly as the prosperous city she commanded burned. Fire Phoenix Douluo Feng still guarded the tent's entrance, the Fire Phoenix sword trembling in her hands. Phoenix patterns along the blade pulsed unwillingly. In her crimson eyes, humanity and bestiality warred. She had almost broken free from control. But then Xingxiao's imprint deep in her soul flared and scorched her so badly she had nearly soul fled and spirit scattered. Her pupils were being swallowed by a darkness that spread like ink. In a different space, Doom Monarch Xingxiao hovered quietly in a starry void. Pure white hair brushed her pale cheeks as she looked down at Mingdu's ruin, reflected in a water mirror, her hollow eyes empty. Beneath her feet, a dark stellar ring slowly rotated, sucking in unseen power. This devastation was not blind slaughter, but a precise purification, the spirit power from battle, the fear, the wails of death. All were silently absorbed into the stellar ring and turned into nourishment for her strength. Mingdu's night sky had gone crimson with flame. Screams, explosions, the clashes of energy merged into a desperate requiem. No one knew when this disaster would end, nor what would truly happen when the Doom Monarch finished her work. Deep in a shadowed alley, blood and filth traced the walls. Zhongli Wu, hooded in a black robe, stared hard at the falling bodies on the streets, knuckles white around his grip. The elders of the Holy Spirit cult fanned out around him, each holding a faintly glowing spirit tool, and yet they stood motionless. Souls that should have floated free when life left the bodies instead turned to specks of light and dissipated, leaving not even a trace. "How is this possible?" an elder whispered, hand shaking, the soul-devouring bottle in his grasp empty. "Even if they are slain by these monsters, there should be souls left." Zhongli Wu spun around, his face beneath the hood contorted with fury. Mingdu held tens of millions of people, plus the powerhouse contestants for the Spirit Master Grand Competition. It should have been a feast of souls for the Holy Spirit cult. He had planned to use the Antimatter Legion's slaughter to harvest a colossal number of souls, to strengthen his evil techniques, and even assault the peak Douluo realm. But now, it was as if someone had snatched the food from his lips. All the delicacies had simply evaporated. "Who the hell is stealing souls from under my nose?" He roared. His spirit power surged, and blood-colored mist rolled like waves around him. "Investigate, dig 3 feet into the ground, and drag out the soul-stealing rat." He refused to believe any ordinary spirit master could snatch souls on such a scale. This had to be the work of a top-tier expert in spatial or soul domains. On a rooftop high above, the night wind lifted Lu Jingming's robes. He looked down calmly at the hellscape and the fearless Antimatter Legion. A wisp of spirit power coiled around his fingertip, the feedback from the mental link to the great Sishuang. The Earth Vein network was functioning, and the dream space had already accommodated over 500,000 souls. "Sometimes you still need a line you won't cross. I don't want to lose what little humanity I have left," Lu Jingming murmured. He could sense the souls in the dream space, sleeping as if in a peaceful dream, waiting for the time they would see the light again. The restorative power of the black abyss white flower and the divine force condensed from an embryonic god position circulated slowly through him. Together, they could mend shattered flesh if the soul was preserved. His eyes went over the spirit masters who had fallen in battle with no emotion. War is cruel. There are always casualties. He could not revive everyone. Reviving spirit masters cost even more. Civilians, however, were different. They were the innocent victims, the bottom line he would not cross. Xingxiao's appearance was an accident, he told himself. But I started the Holy Grail War. This mess should be cleaned up by me. In the imperial bedchamber of Mingdu Palace, a thick medicinal scent lingered. The middle-aged emperor lay weak on a gilded bed, his chest rising and falling faintly. The calming incense in the censer had burned out to cold ash. Xu Tianran sat in a wheelchair, pale fingers tapping the armrest with a crisp sound that was jarringly loud against the distant detonations outside. His face wore no emotion, only a strange, eerie calm. "Just as she predicted," Xu Tianran said with a cold smile. "The so-called agreement means nothing to a doomed monarch." He had never trusted Xingxiao. His cooperation had always been tactical. Mingdu's destruction and the deaths of tens of millions were instruments in his plan, a deliberate upheaval to disrupt rival arrangements and buy himself a path to break the deadlock toward unification. "Unify the Douluo Continent?" he scoffed. Even if he reached the continent's peak 100 years from now, he would still be a handful of yellow dust in the eyes of a divinity. Only eternal life, only becoming a divinity, that is the Tao. For that goal, he had gambled everything. He had colluded with the Holy Spirit cult, tolerated the Antimatter Legion's slaughter of his subjects, even twisted his own spirit, all for the god position promised by a mysterious attendant. That attendant was an existence more elusive than Xingxiao, but far more adept at making deals. No madness, no survival. Xu Tianran sighed, tracing a dragon carved into the armrest. "If no one becomes a divinity in 10,000 years, then I, Xu Tianran, will forge a different path." If it meant the Sun-Moon Empire became scorched earth, he would not hesitate. "You're insane," a cold voice said behind him. Kong Deming emerged from the shadows, silver-white hair glinting in the dim light. The Sun-Moon Empire's sole level 10 spirit master frowned, eyes full of anguish as he stared at Xu Tianran's back, at what he now felt was an utterly unfamiliar monster. He could forgive Xu Tianran's ambition, even tacitly tolerate strong-arm tactics to consolidate power, but he could not accept treating tens of millions of lives like dust. Mingdu's screams felt like a hammer driving through his heart. Insane? Xu Tianran turned his wheelchair with the same gentle smile, as if discussing the weather. Perhaps, But Elder Kong, are you not also a prisoner bound by your ideals? To Shu Tianran, Kong Deming's rigid adherence to non-interference and guarding the Sun-Moon Empire was narrow-mindedness. A true powerhouse should break constraints, even if the road trod was through hell. My instincts tell me I must kill you, Kong Deming said, low and resolute, spirit power rising, even if it betrays my lifelong creed. He had always kept to his duties, watching dynastic changes and power struggles with cold detachment while focusing on spirit tools. But now the urgency was unbearable. Shu Tianran's madness would drag the entire empire into an abyss. Silver Moon Divine Light Shield, Kong Deming shouted, and a silver-white light burst out, a giant glazed shield enveloping the bedchamber. Space sealed tight, not even a trace of energy could leak. It was a level 10 spirit tool he had spent half his life perfecting. A spatial tool powerful enough to contend with a peak Douluo, or even a demigod with his 95 ranks of cultivation. It seems you are determined to act. Shu Tianran's smile faded. Dark figures flashed from the shadows to block the bed. At their head stood Shadow Dulo Shui Chen, surrounded by dense shadow energy, eyes fixed on Kong Deming. Elder Kong, please forgive our rudeness, Shui Chen said and bowed slightly, but his tone was firm. Your Highness the Regent is the future of the Sun-Moon Empire. No one may harm him. The titled Douluo behind him released their spirit rings in unison, the yellow, purple, and black lights braided together and dazzling within the silver moon shield. How could they not know of Shu Tianran's madness? They had no choice. The mysterious attendant's threat loomed over them like a sword. Several level 9 commanders who had resisted were now mindless puppets sent to the front as cannon fodder. Better to bet on Shu Tianran. He at least promised a greater empire. You all. Kong Deming's brow tightened at their loyalty. He had not expected such followers even now. Elder Kong, take Tianzhen and leave Mingdu, Shu Tianran said suddenly, a rare wariness slipping into his voice. Leave and never return. His innocent younger sister might be the last pure blood of the imperial line. As for the rest of his family on the sickbed and other relatives, on his road to divinity, they were expendable dust. Chapter 293, Hulei and Jingyuan. What if this old man insists on trying? Kong Deming's eyes narrowed to steel. His spirit power surged to its peak. This was his only chance. Shu Tianran's retainers were not in the palace at the moment, and if he let this opportunity slip, no one could stop this madman. Elder Kong, you force my hand. Shu Tianran's expression went utterly cold. The gentle look in his eyes vanished, replaced by a molten gold glare. Living, molten gold patterns crawled up his face as the space behind him warped and swelled. A colossal purple dragon spirit unfurled from the distortion. It resembled the purple heaven exterminating dragon, but it was different. Its scales were veined with molten gold markings, its eyes burned with destructive fire, and the aura it gave off made the silver moon divine light shield tremble. This is the purple heaven exterminating dragon? Kong Deming's pupils shrank. Disbelief showed on his face. With the imperial bloodline, he knew that dragon spirit intimately. This one exuded a destructive force that made his chest tighten, far stronger and more terrifying than the purple heaven exterminating dragon he knew. This isn't an ordinary purple heaven exterminating dragon, Elder Kong. Shu Tianran's voice was low and hoarse as his molten gold eyes fixed on Kong Deming. This is the power that will make me a god. Inside the silver moon divine light shield, two dreadful auras collided and braided together. Far below, in the streets of Mingdu, the Antimatter Legion's slaughter continued, oblivious to the confrontation unfolding in the palace. Daihua Bin, I'll start the reckoning with you. Night wind carried the scent of blood around the corner. Huo Yuhao stood atop a ruined wall, black hair lifted by the breeze, his face an icicle in the moonlight. His eyes flared, two blood-red beams shot into the sky, and the bright silver moon shifted into an eerie blood moon. The red glow smeared half the heavens and made the air feel thick and hot. Wolf howls tore through the night. From every shadow, hundreds of massive booley werewolves burst forth, dark gray manes bristling, crimson chi like living flame crawling across their hides. Their claws gleamed, saliva hung from their jaws, and where they passed, deep gouges scored the ground. Their eyes were blood-red with frenzied killing intent as they charged toward Shrek Academy's team. Be careful. What kind of monsters are these? Xiao Xiao and the other masters fell back behind their servants, and Xuanzi, pale as they watched the tide of werewolves. Shrek's group was escorting a clutch of civilians to the outskirts of Mingdu. Xuanzi, Elder Song, and other titled Duuluo led the way, while servants formed defensive ranks on the flanks. With their power, they could force gaps through most enemies. But the Antimatter Legion came like an endless flood, and escorting civilians slowed their progress. Bei Bei fired a Lai Dong, Thunder Dragon claw to blast a pouncing marauder aside. From the corner of his eye, he saw a civilian being raked by the claw of a void minion and dashed to pull the person to safety. They did not know that Lu Jingming had sent the great Banyan Tree King to guide these civilians, souls into the dream space to resettle them properly. All they saw were living people in danger. As Shrek students, they could not stand idle. Despite Shrek Academy's flaws, they had been taught to value life, and they had the power to save lives, even citizens of the Sun Moon Empire. My lord above. At the center, Jeanne d'Arc held the holy banner high, its holy light spreading like a warm tide and cloaking the civilians behind her. The light looked gentle, yet held an unbreakable strength. Marauder claws left only faint white marks when they struck it. Dark matter cannons from the Eradicators made ripples, and even Corruptor's spatial displacement attempts could not breach the shield. A trampler drew a wind-infused arrow and loosed it. The wind arrow shrieked at contact but was stopped by the golden light and dissipated. The civilians, stunned, burst into cheers. The Holy Maiden protects us. They huddled behind Jeanne d'Arc and moved forward toward the banner. Xuanzi snorted and unleashed his spirit power. His spirit rings flared, and a terrifying yellow gravity field expanded 100 meters. The first line of charging werewolves was seized by an invisible hand and slammed into the ground, leaving deep humanoid craters and the dull crack of bones. This is more like it. Shu Sanchi was about to relax when blood-stained claws crawled from the craters. The werewolves whose bones and organs should have been crushed crawled out, their wounds knitting before their eyes, bones grinding and resetting. In moments, they were on their feet and roaring again. This regeneration, it's terrifying. Bei Bei froze as his thunderclaw pierced a werewolf's heart, and the wound squirmed shut. The creature backhanded him, nearly sending him flying. Elder Lin's figure blurred. A condensed wind blade cut off a werewolf's arm. The beast glanced down, picked up the severed limb, and horrifyingly reattached it like reassembling a toy. Flesh and bone fused, the arm restored, and its claws wiggling as though nothing had happened. Elder Lin's eyes narrowed. His wind blade struck again, this time at the neck. When the head came off, the body staggered, tried to bend and retrieve it, but the wound failed to close this time, and the beast finally collapsed, dead. They're Bu Li, abominations of abundance. Qingkui's voice trembled. She recognized the Bu Li origin and instinctively edged toward Jinglu to shield him. Jinglu mirrored the movement. For a brief moment, both tried to protect each other. Then, sharing an awkward glance, they both slipped toward Jeanne d'Arc's shield. The Holy Maiden's barrier offered the best chance of safety. Jingyuan's gaze had been fixed on the Bu Li werewolves from the start, his face grave. He raised his array blade, and golden lightning gathered, sweeping out like a surging dragon. Where it passed, dozens of werewolves were charred into blackened husks, the air acrid with burning fur. These are not native Bu Li. They were forcibly transformed, Jingyuan said in a deep voice, seeing the source clearly. Someone is controlling them with the blessings of abundance. The blood moon above was a glaring sign, like an open hand accusing the sky. Between that and the characteristics of the transformed Bu Li, he guessed who stood behind it. Hulei, the Bu Li warlord, defeated by the former Luofu swordmaster and imprisoned on Luofu Xianzhou. A follower of the hunt, a general of the hunt, is this fate? He muttered. A distant roar shook the buildings. On a nearby tower, a giant werewolf stepped into view. Tall, light blue mane, crimson qi belching like smoke. His oppressive aura made Xuanzi, Elder Song, and the other titled Duuluo tense. Hulei. Jingyuan's voice was calm, but his hand tightened on the array blade. Jeanne d'Arc pressed Qingkui and Jinglu closer, the holy banner flaring brighter. Jingyuan took in the chaotic battlefield and clicked his tongue. As a strategist for the Xianzhou alliance, he was used to planning and intelligence, But in this unfamiliar world, he kept being forced into reaction. The rules here were different from the universe he knew. Without divination commission reports and a network of informants across the Star River, even his sharp mind felt hamstrung, clever, but without the tools to predict and respond in time. One Hule and a pack of transformed Bu Li were not enough on their own to topple Shrek's formation. What worried Jingyuan more were the endless antimatter legion forces. Those dark killing machines seemed to follow a single directive. When Hule and his werewolves arrived, they behaved as if they saw nothing. They kept moving along a predetermined path toward destruction, ignoring the werewolves at their side. A temporary alliance, huh? Jingyuan's voice was low. The Antimatter Legion, working with the Bu Li, made an already tough fight even worse. From Hule's vantage, the giant warblade coalesced crimson chi and roared to life. With a deafening shout, he leapt from the tower, a massive afterimage tearing the air as he barreled down, his blade slicing with the force of 10,000 jin. The gust it generated cracked the ground in a spiderweb. Anywhere the crimson chi passed, light seemed to be devoured. "Disperse," Jingyuan barked. The array blade in his hand hummed and rose. Golden lightning coiled around it like a living thunder dragon. Clang! Their blades met in a collision that could shatter eardrums. The blade soaked in crimson, and the array blade wrapped in golden lightning struck with blinding brilliance, as if a miniature sun exploded at the point of contact. Violent energy rippled out, and space itself groaned as dense cracks raced outward. A mushroom cloud rose in the city center, and a dark red shockwave swept in every direction like a tsunami. Buildings flattened like paper, flagstones ripped up, and the soil beneath revealed. The Antimatter Legion, in the middle of their assaults, took the full brunt. Dozens of marauders were torn apart and reduced to black particles. Tramplers were flung like ragdolls, crashing into ruins. Hundreds of Hule's Bu Li werewolves were launched like kites with broken strings, slamming into walls, while the sickening sound of bones breaking rose and fell. Shrek Academy felt the blast. Xuanzi condensed an earthen yellow shield, but the shockwave shoved him back and etched cracks into the shield. Jean D'Arc's holy light flickered. Though it held and protected the civilians in Qingque, she was hurled back dozens of meters. 2 deep furrows gouged where she fell. The formation scattered, guards thrown every which way. When dust and smoke cleared, Jingyuan and Hule still faced each other across the shattered street. Jingyuan was unscathed. Golden lightning danced about him, and he kept his array blade pressed against Hule's crimson warblade without yielding. Hule's massive form swayed, but his crimson eyes betrayed no surprise. If a Xianzhou general were weak, he would never have earned his rank. After the brief silence, they surged at each other again, the ruined streets of Mingdu their battlefield. "Master, are you all right?" Karna's voice was steady, with an undercurrent of concern. He stayed steady, one arm extended to support the stumbling Hiketu. His golden armor caught the moonlight, and his calm composure was a reassuring anchor. "I'm fine." Hiketu forced a nod, sweat beading on his brow, his face pale. The shockwave had nearly dislocated his internal organs. If Jean D'Arc's shield had not absorbed most of the force, he would have been broken to pieces. He had been flung and tumbled uncontrollably, then slammed into a toppled stone pillar. Dizziness and ringing filled his head. When he recovered enough to look around, he realized the blast had carried him down a side alley into unfamiliar surroundings. His comrades were nowhere to be seen. Only Karna remained at his side like a shadow. Chapter 294, Enemies Meet. "We were separated," Hiketu whispered, his voice heavy with a sorrow that belied the calm at the surface. A dry clack of bone on bone echoed from the alley entrance as 2 plunderers and an eraser lumbered into view. Their pitch-black eyes fixed on the 2 figures in the shadows, and inhuman hisses escaped their throats, hunters scenting fresh prey. 2 streaks of fire shot from Ghana's eyes like molten spears, cutting the air for 100 meters. Where the flames passed, the heat warped the air. The heads of the 2 plunderers exploded into a rain of black particles. The eraser, gathering a dark matter energy cannon, was swallowed by the inferno with a single roar. It was over in an instant, clean, efficient, not even allowing a full howl. "Master, shall I search for others or go to support over there?" Ghana asked. He retracted his gaze and looked at Hikato. The flames in his eyes dimmed slowly. From the distance, Hikato could sense violent clashes. The main battlefield still raged. He hesitated, fingertips clenching at his clothes until his knuckles whitened. Outside the alley, civilians screamed and void soldiers hissed. The sounds that should have frayed his nerves only felt like a needle pressing at old scars. No. Hikato lifted his head. Confusion vanished, and something close to obsession settled into his features. He fixed his eyes on the brightest part of the city, the direction of the Imperial Palace. We're going to the Imperial Palace. A bone-deep chill radiated from him, carrying the weight of more than a decade of hatred, freezing the air like ancient ice. Ghana nodded without hesitation and stood at his master's side, silent, loyal, ready. Whatever Hikato decided, Ghana would follow. It was their contract. It was his fate. Hikato exhaled and reached for the storage pouch at his waist. Mechanical clicks and whirs filled the alley as spirit tools leapt out and assembled around him. Dark iron armor plated his body, runes of arcane blue flaring across its surface. The cannon on his left shoulder rose, blades extended from the gauntlet on his right hand, and thrusters on his back hissed faint white steam. In a few breaths, he was a walking war machine. Alone, even as a Spirit Emperor-level Rank 7 Spirit Master, he would never dare aim for the Imperial Palace, the symbol of the Sun Moon Empire's peak power. But Ghana stood beside him, the son of the Sun God. That power gave Hikato's long, smoldering vengeance a channel. Memories, locked away like a dam, surged forth. He remembered the damp, suffocating secret room where his mother had hidden him as a child, watching as she and his sisters were hunted down and executed. They had died to protect him, never betraying him. The images had been branded into his soul, each recall a slow, burning torture. He trembled not with fear, but with a rage so intense his teeth tasted metallic. Outside, Mingdu had become hell. Wails, pleas, and the crushing advance of the Antimatter Legion. The people who should have been his subjects were being ground under iron hooves. A crooked smile touched his lips, something like grim satisfaction. Maybe this was retribution. The Sun Moon Empire owed a blood debt that was now being repaid. The civilians' suffering stirred no pity in him. To Hikato, they had profited from the imperial family's prosperity, looked away or cheered during past massacres. They did not deserve rescue. If not for Shrek Academy's image as the righteous path, he would not pretend to care at all. "Let's go, Ghana." His voice was cold as ice. The thrusters flared, and he shot out of the alley like black lightning, Ghana at his side, speeding toward the Imperial Palace, the focus of every scar and grievance. Wind swirled the bloodstains at the alley entrance as their silhouettes vanished toward the distant conflagration. "Master, be careful," shouted a voice crackling with sword chi. Siegfried struck like a flash of lightning. The demonic blade Balmung in his hand had transformed into its holy sword form, radiating a blinding silver light. He cleaved at a plunderer's claw, a clash of metal that shattered the limb. "Huabin, we're surrounded." Zhulu's panic sharpened her words. She fought with clawed hands and pushed two void soldiers back, but in the distance a trampler, over 10 meters tall, had turned its cold head in their direction. If not for Siegfried's prodigious power holding the line, she and Dai Huabin would already be corpses. Zhulu was not a master. She'd come as a contestant for the Shrek Academy tournament, expecting a fierce competition, not this massacre. The Antimatter Legion's ambush had turned Mingdu into a slaughterhouse. Dai Huabin's jaw tightened. Shu Tianran's cruelty was cunning. This was not a chaotic bloodletting, but a planned hunt. The tournament was bait to gather the continent's elites in one place. If leaders like Nanshui Shui of the Earth Dragon sect, Poison Undying of the Body sect, and Shrek's own Xuanzi died here, nothing would block the Sun Moon Empire's conquest. Su Tianran didn't hesitate to sacrifice millions of Mingdu civilians to secure his goal. The realization chilled them all. Thump, thump, steady footsteps cut through the din. A figure stepped from the shadows and blocked Dai Huabin and Zhulu's path. "Long time no see, Dai Huabin." Huo Yuhao's voice was languid, but ice ran beneath it. His blood-red pupils fixed on Dai Huabin. A predatory smile lifted one corner of his mouth as if he relished the trapped prey's fear. "Huo Yuhao?" Dai Huabin's eyes narrowed, and he took a step back. The man before him was nothing like the quiet youth of memory. Murder glittered in those red eyes, and the aura around him was as cold as a battlefield at midnight. So you're a master too. Huo Yuhao's gaze flicked to Siegfried, contempt lacing his tone. But how could something like you be worthy of a servant? The insult hit Dai Huabin like a brand. Memories of the White Tiger Duke's mansion flooded back. Torments, the servant's sneers, his mother dying in his arms. Hatred coiled in his gut. Huo Yuhao's blood-red eyes darkened, his features twisting with suppressed fury. Even his breathing grew heavy. Master, this man harbors deep hostility, Siegfried warned, blade raised. The holy sword flared. Siegfried didn't know the history, but the palpable killing intent was enough to put him on full alert. Kill him, Siegfried, Dai Huabin snapped, vengeance burning in his gaze. He had tried to hire assassins before. Failure had only deepened his grudge. Now, with Huo Yuhao abandoned by Shrek and chaos reigning in Mingdu, Dai Huabin could end him without scrutiny. Twilight-colored sword chi lanced out like a streak of lightning, aimed for Huo Yuhao's face. The man dodged, yet the strike clipped his left arm. Blood spurted, his arm was severed at the shoulder and fell with a wet plop. Siegfried's eyes widened. Huo Yuhao's reflexes had surprised him. The holy blade's twilight chi unwound and surged after him, but then both Dai Huabin and Lu gasped. Huo Yuhao looked at the severed limb on the ground and, without a flicker of pain, reached down. He picked up his arm with his right hand and pressed it to the wound. A faint red light flared where flesh met flesh, the tissue writhed and fused as if alive. In breaths, the limb knitted back into place, flawless and scarless. How is this possible? Lu cried. Even a titled Douluo wouldn't have such regeneration. It was beyond human, more like the abilities of lycanthropes. Be careful, master. He's like those wolfmen, Siegfried warned, green lightning crackling around him. He tightened his grip and drove the holy sword harder. Sakura Fubuki trembled in the onslaught. A red light sparked in Yae Sakura's eyes and cherry-colored chi swirled, the blade singing with renewed force. The weapons met in a collision that warped the air. The nearby trampler, intimidated, paused. Huo Yuhao stood a hair's breadth behind Yae Sakura, watching the duel with a colder smile. He turned his head slowly toward the shadowed figure who had just stepped out, Tang Ya. The command spell on the back of her hand glowed an eerie red. That was his ace in the hole. He had known Dai Huabin would have a servant. He could only dare to appear now because Tang Ya's command spell bound Yae Sakura. Yae Sakura was a piece on his board. As long as Tang Ya remained under the Holy Spirit cult's control, Yae Sakura could not break free of the contract. Whether she wanted to or not, she was compelled to obey. Huo Yuhao never expected Yae Sakura to defeat the dragon-slaying hero. He only needed her to stall long enough so he could settle his score with Dai Huabin. His calculation was merciless and precise. Chapter 295, Dragon Blood Armor. Dai Huabin watched the stalemate before him. Yae Sakura's cherry-colored blade light and Siegfried's holy sword crossed in midair, sparks raining like falling stars and making it hard to look directly at them. Huo Yuhao's blood-red eyes fixed on him, and a vine-like unease coiled around Dai Huabin's heart, quickening his breath. Now it's time to settle old scores, Huo Yuhao barked. His gaze went ice-cold, sharper than any frost, and an invisible mental force struck Dai Huabin like a heavy hammer shattered on metal. The decade-long resentment, the humiliation in the White Tiger Duke's mansion, his mother's coughing blood, all compressed into a blade of hatred aimed at Dai Huabin's soul. Dai Huabin felt dizzy, as if countless red-hot needles were crawling in his skull. He groaned, clapped a hand to his forehead, and staggered back, his face going ashen. Huabin, Lu cried, rushing forward to steady him, worry written in her dark eyes. I'm fine. Dai Huabin gritted his teeth and forced himself to stand. He dared not show weakness. If he did, Huo Yuhao would tear them apart. Lu, together. We must kill him today. Before he finished, 5 spirit rings, yellow, yellow, purple, purple, and black, flared into being, and the white tiger spirit possessed him. His body swelled with spirit power, fur suddenly snow-white and bristling like steel needles. The black character for King on his forehead glowed. Claws and fangs gleamed. He blurred into a white afterimage and charged at Huo Yuhao with a tearing scream. Lu answered in kind as the Hell Civet spirit possessed her. She became lithe and nimble, dark fur sleek, eyes glowing a faint green. Faster than Dai Huabin, she closed on Huo Yuhao's side in an instant. Her third spirit ability, Hell Hundred Claws, erupted. Countless shadowy talons roared up from all directions, weaving an inescapable net that even swallowed sunlight and cut off Huo Yuhao's escape. Years of cooperation made their coordination seamless. Dai Huabin attacked head-on with mountain-shattering tiger claws, while Lu harried from the flank like a ghost, probing for openings. Pushed to life-or-death intensity, their spirit power flowed 30% faster than normal and hit harder still. Huo Yuhao watched them coming without panic, a cold smile curving on his lips, madness long suppressed now barely restrained. Spirit power coalesced beneath his feet, and his body slid back like a wraith, narrowly avoiding Lu's claws. The claw wind grazed his clothes and left 5 bone-deep gashes in a nearby broken wall. He flicked his left hand, and a chilling shadow whistled outward. An ice cone condensed from ultimate ice spirit power, its tip faintly blue and cold enough to freeze blood, aimed straight at Dai Huabin's face. Clang! Dai Huabin reacted instantly, blocking with a claw. The ice cone shattered into a spray of frost upon his tiger claw. Frost raced up his arm, freezing more than half of it, ice crystals covering the fur. He had been ready. As soon as his spirit possessed him, he activated his third spirit ability, White Tiger Vajra Transformation. Golden patterns flared beneath the fur and arrested the cold. Otherwise, the ultimate ice would have shattered his arm. Now! Dai Huabin yelled. Lu seized the opening and accelerated, ghosting behind Huo Yuhao. Her claws glinted, and 5 shadow claws blurred into one lethal strike at his back, an attack on one of the body's most vulnerable places. Huo Yuhao seemed to sense it. He twisted, clenched his right fist, and poured mental force into it. Without flashy motion, he rammed the fist toward Lu's lower abdomen. There were no obvious spirit fluctuations on the blow, yet it carried a terrifying soul-rending force, a fusion of mental force and spirit power, a self-made spirit ability. Lu's pupils shrank. She twisted to dodge, but the fist's wind grazed her, and a dizzying, world-shaking sensation hit her. Her mind buzzed, and her movements lagged by half a beat. "You're courting death," Dai Huabin roared and unleashed his first spirit ability, White Tiger Lightwave. A scorching white beam lashed out like a laser, scorching and distorting the air. Even gravel hissed as the wave passed. Red flared in Huo Yuhao's eyes. Instead of retreating, he charged into the beam's path. To everyone's horror, the wave, capable of melting steel, only singed a few hairs on him. Not a burn marred his skin. He raised his left arm, and a blood-red spirit light flared. A giant ice barrier rose from the ground like a snow city wall. Dai Huabin and Lu slammed into that barrier as if against steel and were hurled back, crashing through ruins in a cloud of dust. How is this possible? Dai Huabin spat blood onto his white chest fur as he struggled up, eyes full of disbelief. Huo Yuhao's recovery was preternatural. His defense and offense had become absurd, as if he were someone else. Dai Huabin had lost to him before, always assuming other factors were at play. Now Huo Yuhao had beaten them on sheer strength. Huo Yuhao advanced slowly. With each step, the ground gained a thin film of ice. A vindictive pleasure burned in his blood-red eyes. His voice, low and cold as a grave, cut through the night. "Dai Huabin, do you remember the child you trampled in the White Tiger Duke's mansion? Do you remember your mother pointing at my mother and calling her a harlot, saying, 'A bastard belongs in the mud'?" The air itself seemed to freeze as he spoke. "Today, I'll let you taste what it means to wish you were dead." His spirit power surged, and the ground erupted with countless ice cones, blooming like lotuses in a cold lake and sealing off every direction. You're that bastard." Dai Huabin's pupils contracted as fragments of memory slotted together. The scrawny boy who was bullied, shoved down, who didn't dare to look up. The blurred features in his memory began to match the blood-caked figure before him. Huo Yuhao's face, twisted by hatred, vaguely matched that timid child. A bone-chilling light flashed in Huo Yuhao's eyes. He swung his right hand, and 3 razor-sharp ice blades slashed through the air, whistling toward Dai Huabin's vital points. Dust frozen into crystals in their wake. Spirit fusion ability, Hell White Tiger. Dai Huabin and Lu roared refusal. At the edge of death, their spirit power erupted. The White Tiger's ferocity and the civet's cunning fused. Black and white ghost lights shot up, and a violent spirit wave shattered the ice blades into a spray of shards. A spirit saint-level aura radiated out and shook the ruins, their bodies elongated and merged in the light, becoming a titanic tiger 5 meters tall and nearly 10 meters long, snow-white fur marked with ink-black stripes, its tail tip wreathed in black chi like smoke, vertical pupils glowing feral red. This was their trump card, the Spirit Fusion, Hell White Tiger. Despite its size, it moved with astonishing speed, appearing before Huo Yuhao in an instant. Its paw fell like an avalanche. The palm wind hadn't even arrived before the ground buckled into a crater and stones flew like shrapnel. High above, the blood-red full moon pulsed sinisterly, bathing the scene in a viscous crimson glow. A crimson airflow surged around Huo Yuhao, and a berserk aura burst outward, freezing the Hell-White Tiger mid-strike. A sudden transformation rippled over Huo Yuhao. Silver-white fur sprouted across his body, each strand glinting like ice silk. His fingers lengthened into claws tipped with faint blue crystals. His height swelled past 3 meters, muscles bulging like blocks of ice. Ice crystals formed in the fur, and spikes jutted from his shoulders and elbows. His head took on a wolf's shape, fangs like ice cones, ears ringed with frost. A thick whip-like tail ended in a football-sized lump of ice that cut biting gusts when swung. He looked like an ice wolfman from the far north, human silhouette but holy beast's ferocity and cold. The Hell-White Tiger's paw struck, and Huo Yuhao raised his ice-clad claws to meet it with flesh and bone. The impact rang out with a muffled boom, and shockwaves rolled outward. The ground cracked in a spiderweb for tens of meters. Killing intent blazed in Huo Yuhao's crimson beast eyes as mental force and ultimate ice braided on his claws, forming a living ice wolf energy body that howled, a silent roar of soul-tearing pressure that made the Hell-White Tiger falter. Die! Huo Yuhao lunged, condensing the ice wolf into a fist. With a berserk, destructive will he slammed the fused blow into the Hell-White Tiger's head. The strike combined soul-shredding mental force with the bone-deep cold of ultimate ice. Under that invisible divine pressure, the Hell-White Tiger's mind spasmed and its body locked, unable to dodge. Boom. The ice wolf punch crashed into the tiger's forehead. The Hell-White Tiger let out a keening cry and rocketed backward like a torn kite, plowing a gash through the rubble and finally slamming into a ruined tall building. It carved a gully tens of meters long. The ultimate ice burrowed along its form, freezing the black and white fur and turning sprayed blood into blood-red ice crystals. In only a few breaths, the Hell-White Tiger was a giant ice sculpture embedded in the ruins, its unwilling vertical pupils the only sign of life. Huo Yuhao withdrew his fist slowly, his wolf head bowed slightly, crimson eyes fixed on the frozen statue. Blood stained his silver fur in the moonlight, his chest rose and fell, each breath exhaling white cold chi. The last strike had cost him much, but the fire of hatred in his eyes only burned brighter. "Master!" Dai Huabin screamed. Siegfried's face went white. He had glimpsed the Hell-White Tiger collapse into ice, and his anxiety spiked. He could not linger with Yae Sakura any longer. Clang, clang, clang. Siegfried bore several of Yae Sakura's slashes without hesitation. The blade of Sakura Fubuki threw off brilliant sparks against his dragon blood armor, each strike ringing metallically. Dark red patterns crawled across the armor's surface, defensive power derived from the dragon. The armor absorbed all of Yae Sakura's blows, leaving only a few shallow white marks. The B-plus rank anti-personnel noble phantasm, dragon blood armor, could defend against a certain amount of both physical and energy attacks. Chapter 296, The Fantasy Greatsword Demon Fell. Yae Sakura hadn't expected her opponent's defense to be so formidable. The moment she slightly frowned, Siegfried had already used the recoil to step back dozens of meters. The holy sword Balmung in his hand pointed down toward the ground. His gaze was locked on Huo Yuhao's direction, green lightning crackling around him as if ready to rush to Dai Huabin's aid. Yae Sakura didn't know Siegfried well. She had no knowledge of the fatal weakness he carried as a heroic spirit. If she had, with her speed and divine speed slash, even a tiny adjustment in those earlier strikes might have hit the weak point and killed him outright. Siegfried was gambling on that ignorance. Otherwise, he wouldn't have dared to take her divine speed slashes head-on with his body. And the gamble paid off. This was another world. Very few here knew him, and no one knew his secret. Without that knowledge, normal attacks could not penetrate the defense of his evil dragon blood armor. Siegfried's martial prowess was unquestionable. The holy sword swung with the force to split mountains and shatter rock. Yet against Yae Sakura, he felt stifled, powerful, but unable to use that power. She was too agile, like willow down on the wind, always slipping out of the path of his heavy blade at the last instant. Her speed and reactions far exceeded those of ordinary people. Each slash landed in the gaps of his power transitions. Her swordsmanship was exquisite too, her strikes weaving a dense, impenetrable veil that made breaking her defense extremely difficult. Sorry, I can't let you pass. Yae Sakura moved like a shadow, once again cutting off Siegfried's path. Cherry-colored swordlight whirled around her, forming a barrier that seemed unbreachable. Her face wore a sincere apology, her fox ears drooped slightly. She clearly disliked what she was being forced to do. How could she want to help evil? How could she want to see Huo Yuhao slaughter indiscriminately? But she had no choice. Tangya was still controlled by the Holy Spirit cult. The command seal burned in Tangya's hand like a sword hanging above her head. Unless Yae Sakura withdrew from the fight entirely, she could not ignore Tangya's safety. More importantly, she hadn't seen the Holy Grail yet and couldn't be sure whether the wish to see Callan again could be granted. For that sliver of hope, she was forced to cooperate, for now, with the Holy Spirit cult and with Huo Yuhao, people she despised. Yae Sakura never intended to fight to the death. In her duel with Siegfried, she focused on containment. Her spirit blade danced in a flawless, impenetrable pattern, but she was intentionally holding back 3 parts of her strength. She relied on superior speed to move and dodge, constantly interfering with Siegfried's rhythm with her refined swordplay, all the while avoiding fatal strikes. She hadn't even used Himeko's power, the other strength sealed within her, because that was the power that had killed Callan. Siegfried's perception was keen. He saw through her restraint instantly. He tightened his jaw and swung Balmung even more savagely. Twilight-colored sword chi poured down like a waterfall, but it could not break through Yae Sakura's perimeter. Her movements were just too fast. By the time his blade fell, she would already be on the other side, her swordlight slipping precisely into the transitions of his power. "Get out of the way!" he roared. The green lightning around him flared, fury evident. He could feel Dai Huabin's aura weakening rapidly. Any further delay would likely be fatal. Yae Sakura only shook her head gently in reply. Then her swordlight accelerated. The cherry-colored blades and the twilight sword chi collided again, forming a roiling energy storm that swept up surrounding rubble. Siegfried stared at that barrier, impossibly close but impossible to breach, then toward the ice-encased figure in the distance. His eyes narrowed. It was time to play his last card. Siegfried raised Balmung high. Green lightning, like a coiling python, surged around the blade with a deafening roar. Terrifying power gathered at the edge of the sword. The twilight halo blazed like molten magma, dyeing the air around him a majestic gold red. "The evil dragon shall be struck down." His voice was deep and epic, as if an ancient saga answered him. The world falls into dusk. The light on Balmung brightened until even the blood-red full moon seemed dimmer under its pressure. The surrounding space began to warp. Tiny arcs of electricity shot from the sword, striking the ground and kicking up dust. "I will strike you down." Siegfried's eyes became like an eagle's, locked on Yae Sakura. The green lightning erupted and resolved into a giant dragon-shaped phantom coiling upward, merging with the sword's radiance. Fantasy greatsword, Demon Falls. With that final cry, the sword chi, condensed to its limit, erupted into a pillar of light that split heaven and earth. Within the column, countless sword shadows flickered, each carrying the power to cleave stars, dazzling and terrible in the night over Mingdu. The pillar's energy drew every eye on the battlefield. Not only was it impossible to look at directly, but its fluctuations were strong enough to make the world tremble. It was a force that had reached the domain of a demigod, capable of shattering a city's defenses with a single blow and reducing many li to scorched earth. Yae Sakura's pupils shrank and her fox ears pressed flat. If she continued to hold back, she would never stop this sword. "Big sister," Himeko's panicked voice echoed in her mind. Yae Sakura gritted her teeth. She could not die here, not if there was any chance to see Callan again. she intoned. Violent flames surged from within her. These were not ordinary crimson flames. They shimmered with strange purple sigils. Wherever they passed, hard ground liquefied into bubbling magma. A giant fiery fox phantom, blotting out sky and sun, rose behind her. Its tails swept out heat waves that incinerated everything in their wake. Yae Sakura raised her spirit blade, Sakura Fubuki. The flames coiled around the blade as if guided by will, gathering into a crimson pillar of fire at the tip. Within that pillar, cherry blossoms burned, beautiful and deadly. With a clear, low shout, the crimson pillar slashed down and struck Siegfried's twilight column head-on. Boom! A deafening explosion ripped through Mingdu. Light like a new sun dispelled the night, illuminating ruins and pools of blood alike. A shockwave, like a nuclear blast, rippled outward from the impact. Buildings were leveled like toy blocks. Meters of earth were torn apart. Clouds were driven away. Even the Antimatter Legion, which had been advancing in formation, felt insignificant as forces flung them aside. Two colossal pillars of light wrestled at the city center, ripping a vast opening in the sky and warping space itself. The duel between two peak servants became the focus of the entire battlefield, pushing already chaotic Mingdu to an even more catastrophic brink. That's Siegfried's presence. Cuchulain's spear, red and lethal, stabbed through the head of a trampler. The black energy core at the tip shattered in a burst of sparks. He stood on the twitching giant corpse, blue bodysuit gleaming in the firelight, his scarlet spear idly twirling in his hand as he watched the cataclysm kilometers away. Battle hunger flashed in his eyes. To force a dragon-slaying hero to use his noble phantasm, his opponent is no ordinary foe. It seems something's happened with Dai Huabin. Shu Sanqi, shielded by his heavy Xuanwu shield, felt the shield hum under the stray blasts from the Eradicator's energy cannons. He and Bei Bei took cover back-to-back in a half-collapsed building. The surrounding seats had already been shattered by battle. Bei Bei, bound to the blue lightning tyrant dragon spirit, tore through a plunderer's chest with dragon claws while watching the distant explosion. Should we go help? Jingyuan, Bei Bei's servant, was being restrained by Hu Lei, and the pair had been separated in the chaos. Thankfully, Han Ruoro's servant, Aglaya, wielded potent divine ability. The romantic demigod had already woven a citywide information network with golden threads, allowing allies nearby to find one another quickly. When Shu Sanqi and his servant reached Bei Bei, the heir of the blue lightning tyrant dragon was surrounded by 3 plunderers and in a precarious spot. Support? Bei Bei asked. Shu Sanqi snorted. The Xuanwu shield vibrated, sending a charging plunderer flying. That guy always looks down on everyone. Serves him right to be in trouble now. He kept fighting. The shield's edge glowed darkly and bisected another attacker. Bei Bei backhanded an ambusher with a complex expression. No matter what, he's still one of Shrek's. Bei Bei hated Dai Huabin and even knew he'd hired assassins against Huo Yuhao, but they were scouts of Shrek Academy. Teammates now. Abandoning him felt wrong. Conflicts are conflicts, but when surrounded by outside enemies, we can't tear down our own walls. Shu Sanqi rolled his eyes but didn't argue further. Runic light bloomed on the Xuanwu shield, forming a black barrier that temporarily held back the incoming Void soldiers. All right, but this is only for the Academy's reputation. I'm not fighting to the death. Elsewhere, Xiao Xiao hid behind Song Kui, pale-faced as she watched the towering pillars of light. Jiang Nanan's soft bones rabbit spirit hovered nearby, ready to respond. The 4 of them had reunited thanks to Song Kui's shadow authority, a power that summoned shadows of other servants to carve a bloody path through the city. Sister Nanan, should we go help? Xiao Xiao asked softly. She didn't like Dai Huabin much. She'd seen the abuses Huo Yuhao suffered at the academy. Still, they had been classmates. Not helping left a nagging unease. Jiang Nanan shook her head. If we go, we'll only make things worse. She understood the situation. If even Siegfried had been forced to use his noble phantasm, the enemy they faced over there must be terrifying. Their group had only 2 servants, Song Ke and Qing Kui, far outmatched by Siegfried. Rushing in would likely make them liabilities who needed protection. Xiao Xiao nodded, secretly relieved. She didn't want to go either, but felt guilty admitting it. Song Ke thumped her ample chest with comic relief. Good thing you weren't planning to go. That blast was like a mini sun going off. Going there would be suicide. I don't want to turn into ash. Even as a memory body, she still feared death. Qingque quietly put away her divination rods. She had cast a quick omen earlier. The result said, "Going is ominous, staying is auspicious." Seeing everyone choose to stay, the knot in her chest loosened. She'd been guiding Xiao Xiao around antimatter legion positions with her divinations the whole time, always avoiding the worst tramplers at critical moments. She would not defy her own reading now. "Oh, it's you guys." A voice sounded from the alley entrance and startled Xiao Xiao into clutching Qingque's arm. Jiang Nanan tensed. They turned and saw a slim figure standing on a broken wall not far away. Lu Jingming wore a black trench coat that fluttered in the night wind. He looked calm, almost as if he were simply enjoying the scenery rather than standing amid a battlefield. Lu Jingming? Xiao Xiao's eyes widened. She remembered him from the Spirit Master tournament, his overwhelming strength and an unflappable composure far beyond his years. Jiang Nanan's face lit with a hint of joy, her tension easing. Strictly speaking, she owed loyalty to Ningguang, and Ningguang owed allegiance to Lu Jingming. That made them, in a way, allies. In crisis-ridden Mingdu, spotting a powerful friend was welcome news. Lu Jingming lightly dropped from the wall and landed in front of Jiang Nanan and Qingque, expression calm as ever. Chapter 296, Kong Deming's Choice. Lu Jingming's gaze swept over Jiang Nanan and the others, finally resting on Song Ke and Qingque. A subtle smile touched his lips. Of course, he recognized Grandma Song Kui and General Qing at a glance. After all, they'd been summoned from his memories. "Are you all right? Why are there so few of you?" he asked, a trace of puzzlement in his voice. Shrek Academy's lineup for this operation had been formidable. Titled Douluo like Xuanzi were holding the fort, and there were many powerful retainers. Students like Jiang Nanan and Xiao Xiao shouldn't have been so easily separated. Song Ke puffed out her chest and slapped it as if to calm herself, her golden hair swaying. "Don't do that. You really scared me." She was genuinely rattled. The shockwave had been like a nuclear blast and had not yet fully dissipated. In a situation this dangerous, even the slightest surprise made her heart race. "I'm sorry," Lu Jingming said with one corner of his mouth twitching. As expected of Grandma Song Kui, always dramatic. Jiang Nanan stepped forward and briefly explained what had happened, how the blast scattered them, how Qingque and Song Kui protected them, and how they'd seen Siegfried unleash his noble phantasm. So it looked like Dai Huabin's side had run into trouble. She spoke clearly and methodically, also relaying what they knew about Shrek Academy's retainers and the presence of Hu Lei and Bu Liren. "So that's the situation." Lu Jingming nodded, a ripple of thought crossing his face. Shrek Academy had been lucky. Someone like Jing Yuan, the hunt emissary, had been summoned. That senior brother, the Luofu general, could in theory sit at the same table as the doomed monarch Xing Xiao. Hu Lei and Bu Liren were of less concern. Even the doomed monarch had been summoned. One more battle chief like Bu Liren would only make this melee livelier. He'd also seen, not far off, a silver-white meteor streak through the sky, and had caught a vague glimpse of that three-character general, the one whose name meant something like no worry, no regret, no rival. That combatant's strength had looked even greater than his senior brother's. And Jingliu was reportedly in Mingdu now too. Lu Jingming remembered that Jingliu had once captured and imprisoned Hu Lei in the Luofu Shanzhou dungeon. He felt a teasing grin form. Old rivals reunited in another world might make fascinating fireworks. Clouds disperse, fog vanish. Heavy footsteps suddenly came from the mouth of the alley. Lu Jingming's eyes narrowed. His right hand rose lazily and pointed to the distant street corner. A black cloud of mist suddenly appeared, spreading outward and enveloping 3 tramplers and hundreds of void soldiers that had just turned the corner. The machines that should have roared and charged were silenced inside that black mist. Lu Jingming clenched his fist. The cloud contracted and detonated in an instant. A searing black flash flickered and was gone. Where once stood tramplers' shells and void soldiers' cores, nothing remained. Every part reduced to the most primitive particles by a power that decomposed all things, leaving not a trace. Qingque clutched the jade token in her hand. Song Kui instinctively shrank behind Xiao Xiao. That effortless authority to disintegrate anything was more disquieting than Siegfried's noble display. It lacked the earth-shattering momentum but carried an absolute casual command over life and death, as if a flick of the wrist could write fate. "Come on, I'll take you somewhere safe." Lu Jingming withdrew his hand as if brushing dust from his fingers, then turned and walked out of the alley. The setting sun painted the clouds, his long shadow stretched behind him. His voice was calm, like he was discussing the weather. "I have people there. They'll escort you out of Mingdu safely." Zhang Nanan and Xiao Xiao exchanged looks, both swallowing relief. Lu Jingming's steady presence felt like a guarantee. If he was there, any disaster could be handled. Zhang Nanan patted Xiao Xiao's hand to ease her nerves and quickened her pace to follow. Qing Kui toyed with the jade token and thought, so this is the auspicious sign the divination mentioned. Song Kui, even more relieved now, sprinted to the center of the group, scanning for danger and whispering to Qing Kui, "It's different under a big shot's protection. My legs were jelly just now." They picked their way over shattered bricks. The occasional crunch sounded underfoot. Behind them, Mingdu burned on. Flames painted the sky red, explosions and roars rising like cries from a living purgatory. Yet under Lu Jingming's lead, the way ahead seemed to clear. Even the bloody tang in the air felt less suffocating. "Ha ha! This is exhilarating." Tartaglia's wild laughter rang through the ruins. Azure water blades whirled in his hands, shifting between short daggers and long spears. He slipped through the Antimatter Legion's void soldiers like a fish, each strike accompanied by a sharp whistle that shredded the air. Any void soldier he touched disintegrated into a cloud of negative particles. He bent the water currents at high pressure into patterns, dense rain of water arrows, swirling vortices that dragged in corruptors and shattered them. Skilled with every weapon, relying on superb technique, Tartaglia cut in and out of the enemy ranks, exhilaration and battle intent flashing in his eyes. On a broken wall nearby, Xinjianya stood like a statue, her demonic blade flashing with cold, eerie light. Her movements were more economical than Tartaglia's. When her blade cut through the air, time itself seemed to hiccup. Plunderers that could tear steel, corruptors adept at spatial transfer, even tramplers that could contest titled Douluo. None could withstand her precise, ethereal strikes. Wherever the blade passed, icy fluctuations rippled outward. The Antimatter Legion's bodies froze and then dissolved into negative particles. Together, the two top retainers were tigers among sheep, routing every machine within sight. Without top-tier rivals to stop them, these endless killing machines were merely a nuisance. "Grandpa, what do we do? Continuing like this isn't a solution." Meng stood inside a hastily built spirit tool fortification, brows knit, face full of worry. Her gaze kept darting toward Lu Jingming and the others. The chaos was beyond what she'd imagined, and fear gnawed at her. Jing's eyes were fixed on the direction of the Imperial Palace, flickers of complexity in them. As Kong Deming's disciple and ally, he knew Kong Deming had gone to the Imperial Palace to see Shu Tianran. He couldn't understand why Shu Tianran had seemingly abandoned Mingdu. This regent had personally built underground spirit tool facilities to shelter millions and had inspected every detail, promising civilians wouldn't be harmed after the Spirit Master tournament. Even if the Antimatter Legion's strike had been sudden, with the Sun Moon Empire's military foundation, a direct order from Shu Tianran could have mobilized mecha legions, the 5 great protector hands, city defense spirit cannons and arrays, enough to save a large portion of Mingdu and its people. Yet Shu Tianran had chosen inaction, letting the Antimatter Legion wreak havoc and leaving prepared shelters unused. Even more alarming, the 4 Beast King-level Spirit Tool Master Legions stationed outside, Dreadclaw, Evil Monarch, Imperial Dragon, Fire Phoenix, remained idle. The strongest Imperial Spirit Tool Masters Legion huddled in the palace and did not move. Kong Deming had once controlled those forces. Now it appeared Shu Tianran had wrested control by unknown means. The Antimatter Legion had even avoided the Imperial Palace area, as if some tacit understanding remained between two sides. The facade hadn't been fully torn off yet. "Wait a little longer," Jing said, his voice deep. "Meng, Xiao, organize the civilians and move them to the underground facilities. Quickly." He was buying time, waiting for Kong Deming and Shu Tianran's final decision. If the two fully severed ties, Jing would have to lead the mortal world family out of Mingdu. If there was still room to maneuver, evacuation would be more controlled. Before Jing finished speaking, a silver ripple spread from the void realm, like rings on water. Kong Deming stepped through, accompanied by a young girl, Princess Shu Tianzhen. Using the level 10 spirit tool, the Silver Moon Divine Light Shield, the Super Douluo had performed spatial transfer with ease, a feat only Limit Douluo could match. Master! Jing's face lit with joy, his heavy worry lifting. He didn't want to break with Shu Tianran just yet. The change had come too fast. The mortal world family's roots lay entirely in the Sun Moon Empire. A hasty retreat would cost too much. He needed time to prepare. Kong Deming gently set Shu Tianzhen on the ground. The little princess had lost her usual liveliness and kept her head bowed, already having understood too many cruel realities. Take Tianzhen and your grandchildren and leave Mingdu, Kong Deming said, his voice hoarse and tired. If, after this, Mingdu still stands, you may return. He did not make a move against Shu Tianran. He chose instead to withdraw with the last intact imperial bloodline, the imperial family's pure line. Jing's heart tightened as he understood his master's plan. Between tens of millions of civilians and the imperial bloodline, the old minister who had guarded the Sun Moon Empire his whole life had chosen the latter. His position shaped his priorities. Even if he loathed Shu Tianran's cold-bloodedness, even if he grieved for the dead, Kong Deming made the most rational choice. Preserve the dynasty's bloodline above all else. Then, Master, you, Jing began, voice trembling. Kong Deming's expression grew cold, his eyes steeled. For the future of the Sun Moon Empire, this old man must act. Having chosen to let Shu Tianran have her way, he now committed to seeing it through. Helping Shu Tianran clear any obstacles, leaving the original Douluo Three Kingdoms and Shrek Academy's forces in Mingdu to be buried with the city's millions. After this battle, whoever survived on the Douluo Continent would have to bow before the Sun Moon Empire. The alliance with Sea Abyss City was merely a fallback. If Shu Tianran won, that alliance meant nothing. If she lost, Zhang Lexuan's standing in Sea Abyss City could still ensure the imperial bloodline's survival. Kong Deming never put all his eggs in one basket, and now he could go all in. The Silver Moon Divine Light Shield shimmered around him, and within the dazzling silver glow, a small moon-like space blurred into being. Jing fell silent. Kong Deming couldn't part with the imperial family. His long-held ideals prevailed even over anger at Shu Tianran. Jing, on the other hand, thought differently. His loyalty to the Sun Moon Empire had limits. The survival of his own family came first. He understood that if the mortal world family were annihilated, an empire's survival meant little to him. Compared to the increasingly reckless Shu Tianran, he still had some hope in backing Sea Abyss City. Since your mind is made up, Jing took a deep breath, then looked toward his grandchildren behind him. Meng, Xiao, let your retainers assist, Master. This is, after all, also a war between retainers. It was the last contribution he could make to the Sun Moon Empire. Two top retainers' combat power could tip the balance for Kong Deming, and it would honor the master-disciple bond. Upon hearing the command, Meng and Xiao looked at their retainers, seeking their consent. A master did not have absolute command over retainers. The relationship was mutual and required respect. Chapter 298, Doomsday Beast. I have no objections. Dantalion toyed with the water blade in his hand, his azure eyes glittering with excitement and a wild smile tugging at his lips. As long as there's a fight, it doesn't matter who I help. He had no grand purpose in this Holy Grail war. Either he would grow stronger by slaughter and seize the Grail, or he would die gloriously beneath the blade of a worthy opponent. Either end was satisfactory. Right and wrong never factored into his calculations. In this world, he had no cause. Hoshimiya, however, frowned. She hungered for strength more than most, but her mother's words echoed in her mind. A true hero does not draw a sword to destroy, but to protect. Now she watched commoners crying in the distance, figures struggling beneath the claws of the Antimatter Legion, and something heavy and indescribable rose in her chest. Not battle lust, but obligation. More than fighting other servants, she wanted to wield her blade to protect those innocents. You don't have to force yourself, Meng Hongqin said softly, understanding in her tone. After so much time with Hoshimiya, she knew that behind the cold, occasionally eccentric facade was someone with principles. Do what you want. It's fine. Meng Hongqin never believed a master should force a servant, particularly not a top-tier one like Hoshimiya. Compulsory commands often backfired. Servants were not puppets. Hoshimiya paused, her gaze softening toward Meng Hongqin. She nodded slightly. The cold gleam on her demon blade receded. Like an afterimage, she streaked toward the clusters of civilians. Where her blade light flashed, it no longer challenged the powerful, but precisely struck the void soldiers menacing the populace. Each blow was measured, lethal to enemies, harmless to the innocent. Meng Hongqin watched her go and sighed softly, without displeasure. Both she and Kong Deming respected Hoshimiya's choice, even if Hoshimiya didn't choose to aid them. After all, Hoshimiya was saving the Sun Moon Empire's commoners, people the others had a duty to protect. Besides, having a powerful young master join the fight was already an unexpected boon. Jing Yuan, Hu Lei. A meteor of light streaked across Mingdu's night sky and stopped abruptly in midair. Fei Xiao was wreathed in violent winds. Her silver-white hair streamed behind her, and the long-handled battle axe in her hands shone with a cold light. Her eyes locked on the area ringed with golden lightning and blood-red qi. The familiar power signature told her instantly who was there: Jing Yuan, the divine general and her comrade, and Hu Lei, battle chief of the Buli people, age-old enemies of the Fox clan. Instinct tightened her grip on the axe. Jing Yuan had the advantage, but the scarlet qi around Hu Lei churned stubbornly. He was far from finished. The abominations of abundance had terrifying vitality. Though Hu Lei was not an emanator of abundance, he inherited that resilience. Killing him outright would be difficult. Jing Yuan was no Jing Liu. He lacked the sword techniques and ice power to lock Hu Lei down quickly. This would be a prolonged fight and depended on how long Hu Lei could hold out. Fei Xiao prepared to dive in, but in the starry sky of the other space, Xing Xiao's fingertip brushed the void projection. The Doom Lord's eyes were as cold as frost, and he clearly did not intend to let Fei Xiao interfere so easily. Crack! Space above Mingdu shattered like glass. Cracks spidered outward, and a ferocious aura poured through the rifts, as if the very air was solidifying. Fei Xiao's movement froze, her gaze snapping to the broken void high above. A terrifying power descended, an imperative to annihilate. With the wailing of sliced space came a gauntleted claw wreathed in vengeful spirits. Its armor was scorched like molten rock, its fingertips ringed with purplish-black fissures that swallowed light. A single hand radiated pressure that made even titled Douluo feel small. Another gargantuan, pale, bone-like claw appeared simultaneously, etched with ice crystal patterns and crackling with blue-white energy as if it could freeze time. The two claws tore the already broken space apart like paper. From the depths of the void realm, a dragon-like body hundreds of meters long slid into being. Dark golden carapace plated its frame, each scale flashing metallic cold light. A tail of disaster shadow trailed from its back, the tip a swirl of purplish-black energy like a shattered ring of stars. Suspended in its chest was a dark red sphere of dark matter, veins of energy webbing across its cracked surface, pulsing with tremors that could shake the earth. A deafening roar filled the sky, mingled with the cries of 1,000 vengeful spirits, a declaration from hell itself. The colossal dragon, an incarnation of destruction, poured out of the other space onto the Douluo Continent and hung over Mingdu, its shadow blotting half the city. Doomsday Beast. Lu Jingming, watching from the distance, couldn't help a twitch of his lips. When the spirit beasts of the Jingyang range had been wiped out, he had suspected Xing Xiao was secretly forging something like this. A war machine built atop the bones of a 100,000-year spirit beast, hammered in the war furnace with the grievances of myriad bones and the unreleased wills of the dead. The dark matter engine in its chest was the Doomsday Beast's core, an endless power source. Even this makeshift, locally forged version Xing Xiao had assembled from Douluo Continent materials was enough to possess divine-rank combat power. Monsters like this weren't made lightly, even by Xing Xiao. The Doomsday Beast's scarlet eyes fixed on Fei Xiao, as if naming her its primary threat. It unfurled massive wings, and the dark matter core flared. Veins of dark matter streamed throughout its body, and its aura surged. The sky turned a bruised red, and countless spatial cracks opened. Then dense golden beams of destruction poured from the beast like a rainstorm, most aimed at Fei Xiao. Some indiscriminately slammed into Mingdu. Where they struck, houses vanished and the ground split into bottomless chasms. Heh, perfect timing. Fei Xiao did not retreat. Her eyes burned with fierce intent. The azure airflow around her roiled, and a huge winged fox phantom, her spirit manifestation Fei Huang, rose behind her. The battle axe hummed as winds condensed into blades. Fei Xiao became an azure meteor, cutting through the air at supersonic speed and leaving shockwaves in her wake. She charged straight at the doomsday beast through a curtain of death beams. Her swings turned wind into massive slicing blades that shredded the incoming rays. Above Mingdu, a clash of transcendent powers erupted. Azure gales tangled with the dark golden dragon body. Torrents of destruction met tearing wind blades, plunging the already ruined city into deeper catastrophe. What the hell is that? Is it some dragon clan thing? Dugubo's dark green spirit power flared. With several titled Douluo elders of the body sect, he was shielding Wei Na and other young disciples as they tried to break east. The doomsday beast's shadow pressing down drew every eye. When the golden beams fell, Dugubo, who had pierced Limit Douluo, felt his pupils constrict. He activated his body spirit and used his own body as a shield for Wei Na and the others. The beams contained destructive energy enough to vaporize an ordinary titled Douluo. Even he would not dare take one full force. Can Fei Xiao really move like that under such assault? Dugubo's heart churned. Fei Xiao weaved through the rain of beams, her wind blades repeatedly parrying fatal attacks. Her poise shamed him. If he were the target, escape would be a luxury. She had clearly held back earlier, and even so, she outclassed him. "Grandpa, we have to leave, now." Weina's voice was calm, steady beyond her years. Her mental force spread and swept the battlefield. Mingdu has become a trap. Staying will only get us killed. Her temperament was steady. Even facing the Antimatter Legion and the Doomsday Beast's oppression, there was no panic. Dugubo inhaled and nodded. Mingdu's danger had far exceeded expectation. He had felt lethal pressure from servants more than once. Each summoned being could shake a Limit Douluo. He prepared a burrowing spirit tool to evacuate everyone underground. Then a blinding light erupted from the Mingdu Imperial Palace. A mushroom cloud of flame towered into the sky, sun-like, and shockwaves leveled the entire palace area. Someone attacked the Imperial Palace? Dugubo's eyes sharpened. He knew the Sun Moon Empire's politics intimately. The emperor lay weakened. Regent Shu Tianran held real power and had long been an existential threat to the Heavenly Soul Empire. Dugubo had planned to find a chance to eliminate that power. Xingxiao's chaos had already torn plans to shreds, but this palace explosion was an unexpected opportunity. Whoever dared attack the Imperial Palace now must be gunning for Shu Tianran. If I can kill Shu Tianran, Dugubo's breath quickened. With Mingdu in ruins and the Sun Moon Empire shattered, the Heavenly Soul Empire might be able to strike back and eradicate that threat. "You all take Aochen and Wei Na and get out of Mingdu," Dugubo decided in an instant. "I'll be back soon. I'm going to try and take Shu Tianran's head." Before he finished speaking, he was already a streak of dark green light, piercing smoke and dust toward the Imperial Palace. "Grandpa, be careful." Wei Na did not stop him. She knew better than anyone this was a once-in-a-lifetime chance. If Shu Tianran fell, the entire balance of power could flip. The risk was worth taking. Above the Imperial Palace's ruins, Hiketu stood clad in heavy spirit tool armor, his eyes lit with a cruel, vengeful fire. He looked at the palace swallowed by flames with a grim satisfaction. This had been his home and the grave of his kin. Now it was ash. Beside him, Karna stood quietly, golden armor reflecting the inferno. The anti-army noble phantasm, Brahmastra, cover the earth that had devastated the palace, had come from his hand. Hiketu, drunk on revenge, cared nothing for the innocent who might be caught in the blast. To him, the imperial family were all accomplices who deserved death. "How dare you attack the Imperial Palace? You're courting death!" A furious roar cut from the burning remnants. Members of the Sun Moon Royal Spirit Tool Legion surged from behind surviving shields and encircled Hiketu and Karna. Commander Shu Tianyuan's face was leaden with fury, eyes blazing with a destructive zeal, and spirit tool cannons were already deployed. Karna frowned. A strange look flickered across his features. His poor man's insight could read a man's essence, and Shu Tianyuan's essence was distorted. Some foreign force was eroding his humanity, rewriting his nature. Karna's gaze swept the legion. Many bore the same mark. If their essences were being altered, were they still themselves? Before he could think further, the ground shook violently. Cracks spidered outward as spirit tool turrets and underground devices rose and unfolded, muzzle clusters turning toward the center with a cold, killing intent. Chapter 299, The Sun Turns into Armor. Chapter 298, O Sun, Become Armor. In an instant, the entire Imperial Palace became a forest of steel. Hiketu inhaled sharply. As a spirit tool master, he knew better than anyone the terror of those devices. No fewer than 100 level 9 spirit cannons, each capable of threatening a dinger, titled Douluo. With so many concentrated, even an ultimate Douluo would have little choice but to flee in disarray. When Imperial Father sat the throne, the Imperial Palace never had defenses like this. Hikaitu muttered, stunned. What he didn't know was that Shu Tianran, the man who had been left partially paralyzed by an assassination years ago, had become obsessive about his own safety. Over time, he'd spared no expense to build a near-impregnable defense network beneath the palace. He trusted no one. Even though he commanded the Sun Moon Royal Spirit Tool Legion, he relied most on these cold, heedless weapons. Karna's anti-army noble phantasm had devastated the surface buildings and slaughtered countless guards, but it failed to touch these buried killing machines. And Shu Tianran, who had once forced Kong Deming to change his wager, wouldn't be taken so easily. He stood amid the ruins, a bowl-shaped spirit tool hovering above his head, a brilliant golden shield flowing from it to envelop him. The Qiangkun Do Juan Bowl, an Apex Level 9 defensive spirit tool, could withstand a full-power strike from an ultimate Douluo. It was precisely the life-saving treasure Kong Deming had given him years ago. Shu Tianran's eyes were cold as he watched the surrounded Hiketo and Karna, a cruel smile at the corner of his mouth. Dare to trespass into the Imperial Palace, and be prepared to die here, he said. His finger moved. The surrounding spirit cannons hummed to life, their dazzling lights illuminating his pale face. Open fire! Shu Tianran, leader of the Sun Moon Royal Spirit Tool Legion, roared. Hundreds of cannons unleashed destructive light at once. Crimson energy streams, molten and relentless, braided into an impenetrable net and poured down toward Hikaitu and Karna. The air warped with heat. The ground hissed as it was scorched. Even distant dust was swept away by the force of it. Master, step back! Karna warned in a low voice and stepped forward to shield Hikaitu. Two golden discs flew out from behind him and hung in the air like miniature suns. Fiery sigils flowed over their surfaces, heat so fierce it could melt steel. O sun, become armor! With that chant of his noble phantasm, the golden armor on Karna's body flared with a sun-like radiance. Light swelled and solidified into a thick, luminous shield around him, and Hikaitu, locking them in the center of a glowing aegis. Boom, boom, boom. Countless dense energy beams slammed into the light shield. Explosions rent the air, smoke and fire billowed, and the ruins of the palace were again turned to dust beneath the bombardment. The foundations were churned into scorched earth meters deep. For a moment, it felt as if another sun had risen over the Imperial Palace. Hikaitu, why did that brat run to the palace? Xuanzi muttered from another corner of Mingdu. His ox horns faintly glowed, and his muscles bulged. He threw a punch, and an earthen yellow giant fist, his trampler, sent an enemy crashing through half a tall building. Karna's sacred aura, like the presence of a sun god, was unmistakable. To release a noble phantasm so brazenly left no doubt. Hikaitu's decision not to join the others, but to rush into the Imperial Palace and make a stand, showed a shocking disregard for the broader situation. The Sea God Pavilion Master of Shrek Academy felt his temper flare. On another part of the battlefield, Han Ruruo's voice cut through. She formed seals in her spirit, the golden binding rope, shot out like a living snake, and instantly bound a trampler's 4 limbs. Energy ran along the rope, locking down force that could otherwise tear alloy apart. Ma Xiaotao, wearing the seraphic holy armor, leaped up with raging flames licking its surface and punched the bound trampler. The true Fire Phoenix Phantom spread its wings behind her and engulfed the enemy. The heat warped the air, and the trampler's hard shell melted, sizzling. Nearby, Aglaia stood on a broken wall, delicate golden threads wound around her slender fingers. The web spread through Mingdu, giving her a bird's-eye view of the city. Hiketu and Karna attacking the imperial palace, disciples of various sects retreating, Scylla and Hoshimiya protecting civilians, and familiar faces, Caesar Clytemnestra, Knight Captain Hytham, even Shiadi, all within her thread's perception. Even Huohua, who had left the team and wandered off without Ma Xiaotao, could not escape her attention. Aglaia's brow tightened almost imperceptibly. Her golden threads did more than transmit information. They could find optimal retreat routes. But the spirit tool legions encircling the outskirts of Mingdu had already sealed every exit. Even breaking through the Antimatter Legion's ring would leave survivors facing 4 Beast King-level spirit tool legions assimilated by Xingxiao's harmony power, plus other legions ready for battle. Mingdu had been surrounded so tightly, not even a bird could easily escape. The mastermind clearly intended to trap everyone and decide the outcome in a single, crushing battle. Such deployment, such confidence, and that level of control chilled Aglaia, despite how little humanity remained in her. "The situation isn't great," she said evenly. Her expression stayed calm, as if the desperate scene had nothing to do with her. She could have used her golden thread's lie detection to expose Huohua's prank, but she had chosen silence, neither caring nor wanting to create unnecessary trouble. She had even concealed this ability from her master, Han Ruoro. Han Ruoro nodded, worry creasing her face, but this was no time to linger. The Antimatter Legion would not give them room to breathe. Ma Xiaotao withdrew her fist, and the True Fire Phoenix dissipated to reveal the charred remains of the Trampler. The three exchanged glances. Solemnity stood in all their eyes. If even Aglaia said things looked bleak, they knew it was serious. "There's no need to despair yet. Our side isn't necessarily weaker," Aglaia added, sweeping her gaze over the battlefield. The golden threads on her fingertips trembled, highlighting the 2 most intense engagements she perceived. High above, Fei Xiao's Azure Gale clashed with the Doomsday Beast in an epic duel. In the opposite ruins, Jingyuan's golden lightning slogged against Hulei's blood-red qi. The balance had already tilted in subtle ways. In Aglaia's estimation, Fei Xiao and Jingyuan ranked among the top of Mingdu's combatants. While the Doomsday Beast and Hulei were powerful, they were a notch below. On the side of her old acquaintances, Xiadi and Caesar Clytemnestra had a lineup that could rival Fei Xiao and Jingyuan. The situation hadn't yet reached an irreversible point. She knew, though, that the mastermind controlling the wider situation hadn't fully revealed their hand. Xingxiao's power was fathomless. To weave such a vast net, she couldn't have only the Doomsday Beast as a trump. The final direction of this chaotic battle still held many variables. More importantly, countless powerful servants littered the field, Karna, Yai Sakura, Kuchulayan among them, each with strange, varied abilities. Many of them were beyond the full discernment of even Aglaia's threads. Any servant could become a key to tipping the scale. "Too many variables," Aglaia murmured, a complex light flashing across her face. She could see the present, but not the future. That uncertainty was both fascinating and terrifying. Han Ruoro and Ma Xiaotao exchanged looks. The weight on their hearts eased slightly. With Aglaia's assessment, they could at least tell themselves they hadn't been wholly cornered. "That's good," Ma Xiaotao said, clenching her fist as the flames on her holy armor rekindled. "If there's a chance, we don't give up." Han Ruoro nodded, re-energizing her golden binding rope. "First, find the main force and regroup, then make a plan." They spoke no more, turning to rush toward their companions. Above the ruins, Aglaia's golden threads quietly recorded every clash and skirmish. In Mingdu's western district, the Wuchang Division headquarters loomed in the firelight. Built of profound iron and spirit tool alloy, the structure stood like a dormant giant against the Antimatter Legion's tide. At the first sign of the Legion's assault, Lu Jingming had led everyone here. Top-tier servants like Durandal and Clytemnestra were enough to make any attacker hesitate. The Antimatter Legion surged but could not break the outer defensive perimeter. Its shimmering, destructive members would be picked off by Lemion at range. If they closed, Durandal, Hytham, and the others would finish them. Neither the plunderers nor the tramplers could reach this haven. Xingxiao clearly recognized how hard a nut this was to crack, and had stopped sending heavy forces. Only a few units patrolled the perimeter, forming a peculiar stalemate. Because of that, many civilians had flocked to the Wuchang Division's protection. The courtyard was crowded with ragged people, children in the arms of exhausted elders, eyes still wide with fear, but no longer without hope. Here there was food, patrols of the black and white Wuchang, and a fragile sense of safety. Lu Jingming handed Zhang Nan and Xiao Xiao over to Zhang Lexuan as civilians lined up for hot porridge. Zhang Lexuan, plain-robed and steady-handed, wiped dirt from a child's face. Wuchang Division members and Common People's Alliance medics busied themselves treating the wounded. Despite the crowd, order held. "Settle them in. Don't let anyone else disturb them," Lu Jingming told Zhang Lexuan in a low voice. She nodded and glanced toward Song Ke and Qing Ke in a distant corner. Qing Ke dozed with a jade tablet in her arms, sunlight falling on her peaceful profile. Song Ke squatted on the ground, drawing funny ghost faces with a twig for the children, who burst into laughter. The two servants exuded a lazy air. Neither seemed interested in fighting or competing for the Holy Grail, as if tourists visiting Mingdu. Lu Jingming didn't mind. He had never intended to cram every servant into the final contest, especially not these two. He climbed to the rooftop. The evening breeze lifted his robes and revealed the stigmata on his arm. Overhead, Mingdu's night sky was dyed crimson with firelight. Gunpowder and blood filled the air. Negative energy was thickest in such moments. The Holy Grail War had long since strayed from its original course. The black hole at the Tomb of the Gods had poured negative energy into the world like fuel. The energy pool that would normally condense a single god position had been swamped. Lu Jingming's original plan had been straightforward. Force all servants to fight until only one remained, then use the negative energy of the fallen servants to catalyze a level 1 divine rank sea god position. Now the surplus energy changed things. There was no longer a need to kill every servant. After feeding back to the planet, the excess energy might condense multiple god positions. The plan had to be adapted. The black hole's negative energy introduced new dangers and opportunities. The danger lay in servants that were now supercharged. The Douluo Continent itself might be irrevocably altered. The opportunity was that the overflowing energy could be used to condense more than one god position after the planet evolved, removing the necessity of total annihilation. That meant Zhang Lexuan, Shu Juju, and others might not have to make their servants fight to the death to determine a sole victor. The wind chimes at the rooftop edge tinkled softly. Lu Jingming stared past the city, as if into another dimension. He could see Xing Xiao's actions. Though that Doom Lord had never physically appeared, she was like an invisible shadow, greedily draining negative energy from all over Mingdu. The Antimatter Legion's slaughter, the civilians' wails, the Spirit Master's fear and rage, all that negative emotion was being converted into nourishment for her. The summoned memory body servants condensed from negative energy could grow ever stronger by absorbing more of it. Chapter 300. The director whose script was torn with Lu Jingming's control over the World Tree's authority, he could sever the flow in the Earth meridians at will, making Xing Xiao's plan impotent. He could have taken credit for Xing Xiao's gains, but he did not. His fingertips brushed the void realm, and the patterns of the Earth's meridian network lit up before him like countless glowing veins. He could almost reach out and feel the currents of negative energy, the destructive hunger of each explosion, the despair at each death, the spite of each betrayal. These dark forces converged along the meridians and flowed to two destinations, Xing Xiao and the Holy Grail. The negative energy absorbed by Xing Xiao strengthened her. The portion absorbed by the Grail was purified, inverted into positive energy, and returned to the planet beneath his feet. Sacrifice the small self to achieve the greater self, Lu Jingming murmured, his voice flat. Once a justification for the powerful to oppress the weak, it had become his operating principle. The spirit masters and civilians who died in Mingdu, the spirit beasts wailing in the crucible of war, each death was a tragedy for the individual, but on the timescale of a planet they were, in his estimation, nutrients for something larger. He was no saint. He wasn't even a good man. To elevate this world and open a wider future, he quietly allowed this disaster to unfold. Faces of the lost flashed through his mind, blurred and nameless. This was reality. The ambitions of the powerful were built on bones. All he could do was hold to one bottom line. At least, Lu Jingming clenched his fist. The World Tree stigmata on his hand glowed faintly. I will bring back the civilians who died in Mingdu. Beyond that, he could not and would not do more. Explosions still echoed in the night wind. The battle between Fei Xiao and the Doomsday Beast raged on. Lu Jingming looked toward the alternate dimension. Xing Xiao had opened, and a faint smile curved his lips. He could guess the Doom Lord's plan. He himself had thought along similar lines before. Xing Xiao, not being the Doom Lord's true body, lacked sufficient power, which forced her to rely on slaughter and destruction to accumulate energy for her ultimate goal. I can feel it. This planet is changing. Haidam's figure appeared behind him, her presence like a sea breeze. Her voice carried something complicated. Is this what you wanted? Lu Jingming chuckled, not surprised by her perception. As a demigod with partial authority over the ocean, she would naturally sense planetary shifts. The ocean is the source of life. When a world evolves, the sea reacts first. As expected of the demigod of the ocean, he said, turning so their gazes met. Yes, I want to make this world stronger, strong enough to hold a broader future. The concentration of energy in the deep ocean is rising, Hytham observed slowly, with a trace of unease. This change is spreading to the land and will soon cover the entire planet. The sea itself is expanding, but not by swallowing land. The planet is growing. New elements and substances are being born, like a seed breaking its shell. She looked at Lu Jingming with growing complexity. To spirit masters, civilians, and spirit beasts who had perished, he was plainly the villain whose hands were stained with blood. But for the continuity of planetary civilization and for its future inhabitants, he was like a pioneer splitting chaos. Hytham remembered her own past, how she had killed 60,000 enemies to open her path of chasing fire. Were those lives not steps on her own path? She had no moral standing to condemn Lu Jingming, and in her heart she tacitly accepted the idea of necessary sacrifice. For a more worthy future, sacrifices were unavoidable, at least for those of them who stood outside the board and moved the pieces. She didn't know that Lu Jingming had a resurrection contingency. Otherwise, her judgment might have been even more conflicted. If you plan to stay in this world, or help Sujuju secure a god position, Lu Jingming didn't want to dwell on heavy things and shifted the topic. Then go hunt other servants. Haytham inclined her head and left. She would do it without being ordered. Though god positions were no longer unique and multiple servants might remain, the slots were still limited and competition inevitable. Unwilling to strike at allies within her faction, she would target enemy servants. As the demigod who once annihilated tens of thousands in a single battle, she was both god of killing and god of war. Few could rival her, save for the exceptional Fei Xiao, Jingyuan, and Xing Xiao. Lu Jingming had reason to believe that, barring the unforeseen, Haytham would be among the final victors, especially since she served Shuju, one of their own. Go on, all of you, take the stage. Lu Jingming's voice, like an invisible trumpet, sounded in the minds of servants such as Durandal and Krydera. Your scripts have begun. The actors are all here. I've been waiting for you to say that. Krydera folded away the golden chessboard in pieces with a calm smile, looking toward the returning Hytham. My sword banner, Duke, as always, let us go forth and return victorious. At your command, Caesar. Hytham bowed, hand to chest, battle intent simmering beneath her elegance. Her sword was already drawn, its edge bared. Do I have to go too? Raiden Mei's figure appeared behind Lu Jingming. As the planner of the Holy Grail War and Lu Jingming's servant, she didn't strictly need to go to the front lines. You'll come with me, he replied. A strange glint passed through his eyes. We'll visit a friend on the way. She should count as a friend, right? Lu Jingming had found Vita among the servants. Mei might know her, though. Whether they were friends was another matter. A friend? Raiden Mei frowned. Besides Durandal and Song Kuei, were there other servants from her world? You'll know when you see her. Lu Jingming chuckled. Given Vita's reputation as a troublemaker in the Honkai world, Mei probably wouldn't be thrilled. I don't like riddlers. Raiden Mei fixed him with an icy stare, as if weighing the best place to drive a knife. Fine, it's Vita. Lu Jingming's mouth twitched. Better not to offend this cook. He didn't want strange things appearing in his meals. It's really her, then? May's tone was laced with disdain. No one liked being toyed with, and a familiar name from another world still caused a faint ripple in her chest. If she could use the chance to teach Vita a lesson, it didn't seem so bad. Across the field, Guyu summoned Wang Chuer and spoke in a low voice. Chuer, take Durandal with you. You should know you're still missing something. Go kill her and become whole. Wang Chuer startled and then nodded. After breaking through to Spirit Saint, and without the secret manipulation of a certain God King, she clearly felt her own incompleteness. The missing piece of her existence lay in Mingdu. If she devoured that other presence, she could be made whole, an independent, dominant individual. Guyue's eyes were grave. Sea god Tang San was occupied elsewhere and couldn't intervene in Douluo Continent. Tang Wutong only had a whisper of sea god's divine sense. If Wang Chuer killed Tang Wutong and absorbed her, she could supplant that existence, like the Emperor Auspicious Beast merging with Tang Wutong, but with Wang Chuer dominant. Wang Chuer had always seen herself as a spirit beast, an Emperor Auspicious Beast. Even after regaining wholeness, she would never acknowledge Tang San. If that sea god demanded to be called father, he would be met with the Golden Dragon Spear's merciless thrust. This was Guyue's retaliation for Tang San's plots against the Emperor Auspicious Beast and their kind. Miss Durandal, I entrust Chuer to you. Guyue looked at Durandal. Wang Chuer and Tang Wutong were evenly matched. The variables lay with the Clear Sky sect and Tang Wutong's servants. With Lu Jingming and Guyue backing her, Durandal's chance of victory was very high. I may not understand it all, but I will defeat every enemy, Durandal declared. She did not know the full history between Tang Wutong and Wang Chuer, but her duty was simple: defeat her foes and let the results speak. Ishtalu, are you coming? Guyue asked the servant at her side. Ishtalu lazily shook her head. No interest. It's boring. To Ishtalu, neither the Holy Grail nor a god position was attractive. She wanted only to use her authority to record the world. History was what mattered to her. If Guyue truly sought a god position, Ishtalu might rouse herself to help, out of duty to the master who had summoned her. But Guyue had long signaled she did not need a Holy Grail slot. Her true body, the Silver Dragon King, was itself a God King level position bound to her bloodline. Having the Silver Dragon King's bloodline was equivalent to having that God King. She needed no external god position. Guyu and Ishtalu had chosen from the start to stand aside from the main competition. Damn it! Who is it? Who dared to steal my director's place, little Huohua? I'm so mad! Huohua stomped, cheeks puffed in fury. Her black twin tails swayed, red tassels tracing anxious arcs. Her fiery red outfit looked like a living flame, matching her ruffled mood. Before coming to Mingdu, she had meticulously planned every skirmish in her storyboard, working late to write Vita into the script and waiting to stage her own Holy Grail war epic. But the Doom Lord had flipped the table. The Antimatter Legion had surged in, and her plot was shattered overnight. Director Huo Hua had gone from backstage strategist to an extra chased by the fires of war. She could not accept it. So what if the script's torn? A mischievous light sparked in her rose-colored eyes, and a prankish smile curled her lips. Lady Huohua refuses to be an actor at someone else's whim. I'm going to find the mastermind and settle the score. She wasn't a naive damsel. As a masked fool, she could see the deeper game behind the Grail War. Xing Xiao, the hunt envoys Jing Yuan and Jing Liu, they were all pieces dancing on a stage. Before, she'd been content to watch them follow her script. Now that the fun was gone, simply fighting other servants or clobbering Xing Xiao herself felt dull. Rooting out the hidden player was far more entertaining. As Huohua set out to find that mastermind, her gaze swept the half-collapsed clock tower on the corner. Gears jammed in the crumbling wall, moonlight filtered through the cracks, casting mottled shadows. She stopped. The idea in her head brightened like a child discovering a toy. What's the point of finding the mastermind directly? She whispered, eyes gleaming. How about a different way to play? A more delightful toy presented itself, one that could make the Holy Grail War far more entertaining than confronting the puppeteer. A masked fool never lacked amusement. She simply made her own. Huohua melted into the shadows and slipped into the clock tower, her red skirt brushing broken bricks and leaving a trail of light footsteps. Rather than seek out the master, she'd be the most troublesome piece. The thought of the mastermind squirming made her laugh. That bell-like giggle echoed through the ruins. From the rooftop of the Wuchang division, Lu Jingming felt a twitch of unease and frowned. He rubbed his brow, sensing as if someone somewhere muttered mischief about him. Two faces immediately came to mind, Huohua's sparkling, naughty eyes and that troublemaker Vita. Those two masked fools were never simple to handle. If they got together, who knew what chaotic schemes they might hatch?